What if the Avengers lost the Evolutionary War? This kicks off the second volume of the series. The Avengers fail to stop the High Evolutionary's genetic bomb, thus the entire world is mutated, with regular humans gaining larger brains and mental powers, while anyone already a superpowered being find their abilities greatly amplified. With humanity now telepathically linked and above things like war and prejudice, the heroes decide they are no longer needed, and most join together to travel the universe as one cosmic mind, absorbing the Eternal's Unimind on the way. Eons pass on Earth as the remaining heroes die, and humanity evolves to the point they are able to vaporize the Celestials and turn themselves and the Earth into one large sentient planet. Meanwhile, the heroes continue to travel the universe, completely destroying warfaring species like the Skrulls and eventually even Galactus. Finally, they reach the cosmic figure's eternity and death, and through their combined energies become one even more powerful being. High Evolutionary tries to take credit for the amalgamation, but they tell him he is nothing to them, leaving the universe to create their own. Without the presence of eternity, the original universe atrophies, save for the sentient Earth, where the High Evolutionary stands forever, hoping a new cosmic being will emerge to resurrect the universe. This is an interesting, bittersweet story, and definitely feels like a finale to the Marvel Universe, but also a journey of life, death, and renewal. Though why Wolverine was the best choice to lead the Cosmic Supers, I have no idea. What if Daredevil killed the Kingpin? During the events of the Born Again storyline, instead of just fighting the Kingpin, Matt shoots him in the head. He instantly regrets what he did, and already at his absolute lowest point, goes completely insane, hallucinating being arrested and sentenced, but condemned to live with what he did. A manhunt is launched for Matt, and both Spider-Man and Punisher find him in an alleyway, begging for death and barely able to comprehend reality. They both offer to help him, but he fights them off and runs away. And without Matt to save her, Karen Page is gunned down by the gangster Paulo. Meanwhile, Kingpin's son Richard hears about his death at the hands of Matt, and despite hating his father, pledges to kill Matt for justice. Matt literally shows up right at his door and begs Richard to kill him, which Richard debates if he should. However, the power struggle created by the Kingpin's death finally makes its way to Richard in the form of Hammerhead via his new enforcer, Hobgoblin. After a violent fight, Hobgoblin prepares the final blow, but Matt tackles him, sticking his pumpkin bomb to his glider and killing them both. Weeks later, Daredevil is again seen in public, but it's now Richard who wears the mask, to honor the legacy of the Man Without Fear. This is a great alternate ending to the storyline, and even if Frank Miller didn't write it, the narration imitates his style very faithfully. I don't know if Punisher's moral code would have him let Matt go unpunished, though. What if Steve Rogers had refused to give up being Captain America? Instead of retiring his identity when told he must become a government subordinate, Steve rebels and is branded a traitor, barely making it out of the Pentagon. He cuts all ties with the Avengers, who, after a raid by the Freedom Force looking for Steve, are also disavowed by the government. Steve finds some less public superheroes, and they get word to Rick Jones to announce that Steve will appear to address his charges. But during the peaceful rally, they're ambushed by Super Patriot, who shows no qualms about killing the heroes and the innocent crowd. Thankfully, they're stopped by Nick Fury, who, after securing the area, allows President Reagan to pardon Steve of all charges and reinstate him. However, the mysterious Smith, who is actually Red Skull and a clone of Steve, orders Douglas Rockwell to kill Steve, which he does. In the aftermath, he appoints Super Patriot as the new Captain America, but his bloodlust becomes uncontrollable as he's put away, with the mantle retired forever, much to the joy of Red Skull. This is an okay story, but it feels rushed. We never see the Avengers again. Taskmaster is brought in to train Freedom Force, and that just ends. Reagan shows up out of nowhere to completely clear Steve, and the aftermath is mostly told in narration. It's entertaining, but insultingly short, but I guess they had to make room to show us what if Galactus was Uncle Ben's nephew. What if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? Peter is unable to visit Reed in time to prevent the symbiote suit from fully bonding with him. Thus, when Reed is finally able to blast the suit off Peter, it just reattaches, fully taking over Peter and forcing Reed to knock out and imprison them both. Despite their best efforts, Reed and Strange are unable to detach the symbiote and eventually breaks free. Later, as the Avengers battle Hulk, the symbiote intrudes and absorbs Hulk, casting away Peter before escaping with its new host. Peter is still alive, but horribly aged by the symbiote feasting on his vitality. He tries to return home, but can't bring himself to admit what happened to Aunt May, just telling her Peter loves her before tearfully leaving, dying of old age soon after. And without his guidance, Felicia sees no reason not to continue working for Kingpin. With help from Peter's research notes, Reed constructs an incredibly powerful weapon and tracker, then with a team of heroes finds the symbiote near Mount Rushmore. Thor battles the possessed Hulk, seemingly stunning them, but it was a trick, allowing the symbiote to bond with Thor. The heroes are no match for their incredible power, but as a last resort, Reed summons Black Bolt, who, with his immense sonic powers, blasts the symbiote off Thor. They intend to contain it, but Felicia shows up with her own sonic gun and kills it as revenge for Peter before leaving to work for Kingpin forever. This is really good. A great team up between most of the big names at the time, with the Peter plot being especially heartbreaking. Easily the best story so far, though why didn't Reed recruit Black Bolt in the first place? What if the Vision had destroyed the Avengers? Power Man sides with the Avengers earlier, thus the battle against Zemo is won faster, and Simon receives an antidote to the radiation that originally rendered him comatose. Thus he becomes a full member of the Avengers, sticking with them through multiple line changes and preventing some events and new recruits with his very presence. He also starts a romance with Wanda, enraging Pietro, who leaves the team and sides with Magneto. In a later battle, Pietro sacrifices himself to save Wanda, who then kills Magneto, and afterwards Simon and Wanda are married. But since Simon never died, Ultron instead uses his own mind to bring Vision to life and attack the Avengers. The team, accompanied by Tony, Steve, and Thor, valiantly fight Vision, but he proves too powerful. Luckily, Hank is able to use his Ant-Man form to infiltrate Vision's mind and pull just the right wire to shut him down. Simon is fatally injured, but Hank uses his know-how to download his brain into Vision, thus giving him the form he originally would have had. This is an okay story. The first half is mostly a retelling of multiple events with slight changes, and the second is one big fight scene. Nothing that really stands out, but still exciting nonetheless, and we partly get an answer to what if Ant-Man just shrank down into the body of a supervillain. Now if only he grew while he was in Vision's melon. What if the X-Men lost Inferno? At the arc's conclusion, Sim acquires the Soul Sword and teleports back to Earth, where he absorbs Nastier's energy and uses it to incinerate or enslave most of Earth's heroes. With Madeline's help, they open the portal to Limbo, and Earth is is conquered by demons. Weeks later, Strange and a handful of heroes attempt to find a way to reverse the portal, only to be ambushed by Sim and a horde of corrupted supers, who kill most of the group before Thor sacrifices himself to let the others escape. In their new hiding place, Strange detects a source of power, which turned out to be Rachel, who he frees from her form as a store mannequin. They form a plan to have Rachel summon the Phoenix that will purge the world of the demons, but also most of humanity. But before anyone can argue, Mordo betrays them and Sim, Madeline, and their horde invade. Johnny buys Strange and Rachel just enough time to summon the Phoenix, which Madeline also attempts to control. With Sim weakened from trying to take down Strange's shields, Mordo attacks him and takes his sword and power for himself. A corrupted Wolverine accidentally kills Kitty Pryde, forcing whatever conscience he still has to kill Mordo and himself in the process. Madeline takes the power of the Phoenix, only for a dying Sim to reanimate Wolverine's skeleton and kill her. Now fully in control, Rachel looses the Phoenix across the world, destroying all of demonkind and restoring the Earth to a more primal state. Months later, Strange and Rachel look unhappily as a new life is birthed into a new world. Hot damn, this one was good. Best one yet. My summary can't do it justice. Read it yourself. What if Wolverine was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Right after Logan's first appearance fighting the Hulk, Fury shows up to take him to S.H.I.E.L.D. He's briefly loaned out by Alpha Flight to hunt down Hydra android replicas infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D., which, thanks to Logan's keen senses, he and Natasha effortlessly seek and destroy, also giving her a haircut. With the danger cleared, S.H.I.E.L.D. then goes after Hydra headquarters, where Fury and Baron Strucker face off, Fury managing to electrocute him. Impressed with his work, Fury recruits Logan full-time, and Logan quickly becomes S.H.I.E.L.D.'s top agent. Later, Fury is killed by a robot version of Strucker, and Logan becomes head of S.H.I.E.L.D., with the closing narration stating that his influence resulted in much better human and mutant relations than the main universe. This story's okay, just here to further showcase the awesomeness of Wolverine. Again, it feels really cut short, and I would have loved to actually see the events described at the end. We also get some great artwork from Rob Liefeld before he let his ego destroy his talent, though for some reason Logan keeps putting on and taking off his mask, eventually leaving it off for good. Guess he was just foreshadowing Hugh Jackman's portrayal. What if Iron Man lost the armor wars? Scott is captured right after revealing to Tony that his armor designs were stolen. He's brought before Hammer and forced to tell him everything, allowing Hammer to reverse engineer Tony's designs and take control of his armor. Tony's also brought before Hammer, where he's forced to reveal his identity, then put on a collar that brainwashes him, revealing everything about his technology to Hammer, who uses it to blow up S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers headquarters. He then orders Tony to destroy his own home and business before unmasking in front of the press and revealing all the destruction was because of him. But before he can order Tony to kill himself, Hammer is captured by the terrorist group AIM, allowing Tony to remove the collar and destroy his armor, also changing his look since he's now a fugitive. With no other options, Tony calls all the villains who are using his stolen designs in their own armor, telling him AIM can take control of them as easily as Hammer did him. Thus, they reluctantly allow him to tinker with their suits to prevent outside control, then unite in one big assault on AIM Central Station. While the others fight AIM, Tony sneaks into the basement, where he finds and takes control of the firepower suit AIM was about to unleash, also saving Scott as his daughter. They defeat AIM, but with their common goal accomplished, the villains turn on Tony, who's saved by a surprise visit from the Avengers. Unfortunately, for his role in nearly getting them killed, Tony is also arrested, and the comic ends with it dubious if Tony will ever be trusted again. This is pretty good. It's always awesome when the villains have to join the good side to fight a common foe, though I'm not sold on Tony's Steve Rogers look, but enjoy these shots of Tony in his briefs. What if the X-Men died on their first mission? Both the old and new X-Men teams fail to escape the living island Krakatoa when it's shot into space, killing everyone. Overcome with guilt, Xavier retreats from society, with only Hank keeping him alive, who later hires Moira and Rain as caretakers. One day, Count Nefaria and his Annie-Men announce that they have taken over America's nuclear weapons, but even with the Avengers and Fantastic Four unavailable, Xavier refuses to summon more mutants to help. Thus, Hank is forced to use Cerebro, recruiting Wanda, Pietro, Nita, and heroes later known as Siren and Warpath, before the machine overloads and explodes, but not before Hank uses an algorithm based on Nightcrawler to teleport himself, Rain, and the other heroes to the missile base. They fight against the Annie-Men, but Dragonfly paralyzes them all with hypnosis, forcing Xavier to awaken Rain's werewolf form and distract Dragonfly. The team defeat the Annie-Men, disable the missile launch, and even stop Nefaria from escaping. Their victory finally gets Xavier out of his slump, and he deems them the new X-Men team, which they all accept. This is a very good story about finding hope after tragedy, and that there are always people to count on to turn defeat into victory, but most importantly, don't let Black Bolt talk in his sleep. What if the Punisher's family hadn't been killed? Frank doesn't stumble on the Mafia hit that originally led to the death of his wife and kids. Instead, he joins the police force, intending to do good, but soon discovering how corrupt the system is, witnessing a judge and even his partner taking bribes. He goes to the police captain to see justice done, who encourages Frank to gather evidence. As he sees more and more corruption, Frank's anger grows, but he continues to be a loyal officer and father. When he decides he has enough evidence, he gives it to the captain, who congratulates Frank, but behind his back reveals he's also corrupt, putting hit on Frank and his family. All but Frank are killed, including Frank's cousin Jake, whose body is mistaken for Frank's. At the funeral, the captain is shot by a sniper, who's revealed to be Frank, who also kills the corrupt judge. Offended by his new nickname, the Angel of Death, he sends the evidence he had been stockpiling to the papers, showing how monstrous his victims actually were. He continues his crusade against corruption, providing evidence behind each kill and rallying public support, and the story ends with him killing his former partner, fully becoming the Punisher. This story's awesome, showing a believable alternate route for Frank becoming the Punisher, just a version more focused on stopping corruption than general crime, and he's even seen as a hero. Has a very strong vigilante movie vibe to it, and is something I wouldn't mind seeing more of. Also, Hawkeye's a great golfer. What if the Fantastic Four all had the same power? First, the team all have the power of the Human Torch, their adventures continuing mostly as normal, but in their battle against Miracle Man, they accidentally torch a tenement containing a woman and her baby, who they're unable to save, and guilt-ridden disband the team. Next, they all have Mr. Fantastic's power, which they decide is useless for heroics and go their separate ways, with only Johnny making his powers public for entertainment. Then they all mutate similar to the Thing, Ben and Johnny retaining their personalities, but Reed rapidly losing his intellect and Sue turning completely feral. Knowing the world will fear them, they take take Reed's flying car and live forever on Monster Island. Finally, they gain the abilities of Invisible Woman, where Nick Fury is on the scene where they crash and is the first to see their power, immediately recruiting them into S.H.I.E.L.D. Later, Reed is ordered to surrender himself to Doom, with the rest of the team invisibly tagging along. Once revealed, Johnny and Ben battle Doom while Sue saves Reed. Doom nearly kills him with a sonic gun, but Ben knocks him out with a strong psychic blast. Doom is taken into custody and the team continued their work with S.H.I.E.L.D. This was a lot better than I thought it would be, creating some very distinctive stories with each scenario, some funny, some tragic. The last one has the most meat to it, but all were wildly entertaining, though seeing Sue as a nun and Ben in spandex, I'm sorry, is just too funny. What if the X-Men had stayed in Asgard? After their mission to rescue the new mutants in Asgard, the entire group has to decide whether to leave or stay forever. It's put to a vote and the decision is to stay, though Loki, just to make himself look good, returns the ones who want to leave back to Earth. The other heroes find paradise in their new home, with Storm even considered to rule Asgard. Karnilla, enraged that Storm is favored over Balder, allies with Hela, who also hates Storm. While introducing Storm at the All Thing arena, Loki is suddenly kidnapped by a figure who turns out to be a giant frog wearing Thor's outfit, who actually is Thor under Loki's spell. Meanwhile, Volstagg finds the Sword of Surtur and accidentally destroys it, freeing Thor from his curse. Refusing to give up power, Loki sends an army of giants towards the heroes. Right at the same time, Hela and Karnilla send their armies. Cannonball and Rain joining in with their own armies. An immense battle commences with many fatalities. Karnilla is encouraged to retreat by Balder, who promises himself to her forever, while Thor, Storm, and the Valkyries summon power so immense they actually kill the goddess of death herself, ceasing her army as well. Magic and Cypher appear to fully stop the conflict, and afterwards, Storm is declared ruler of Asgard, with happy and bittersweet endings for everyone else as well. Also, Loki is banished to the end of time. I want to like this one, I just wish it was easier to follow. I had to leave out quite a few plot points to keep the summary short, but it's fine, and I'm glad everyone got their greatest desires, including the desire to see Frog Thor. What if Professor X had become the Juggernaut? Xavier is the one to touch the gem of Cyttorak instead of Marco, thus he's buried alive and unable to form the X-Men. Magneto conquers Santo Marco, and with nowhere else to go, the mutants of the world join him, eventually declaring war on the United Nations, who then decimate the mutant population. Finally, after years of digging, Xavier emerges back into the world, where he declares himself sovereign over all mutant kind, usurping Magneto and banishing him forever. Xavier uses his strength to destroy the Sentinel projects, then his intellect to remove all powers from non-mutant heroes, then both to nullify all superheroes not his own. Seeing the growing mutant power, the governments nuke the planet as a last resort, but Xavier and his people are unaffected, and with most of humanity dead and the fallout radiation resulting in more common mutant births, mutants rule unopposed over humanity. Many years later, Scott tries to keep the peace, but even he finally can't stand the cruelties of Xavier's fascist rule, inviting other mutants to leave and help humanity, most of whom refuse. Scott and his group are banished, only to be recruited by Marco and Magneto, who give them headbands that block Xavier's psychic abilities. While they didn't wish to fight Xavier, they don't want his rule to last, thus they begin an assault on the other X-Men, defeating most and destroying Cerebro, enraging Xavier. They trick him onto Magneto's space station, then blow away where he stands, sending him careening into deep space forever. Magneto announces his intention to rule Earth, but Scott and his group say they will guard Earth from all oppressors, and they head back knowing the immense amount of work awaiting them. This one's great! What else can I say? Xavier's a juggernaut, bitch! What if Captain Marvel had not died? Instead of succumbing to cancer, Marvel discovers the growth early and, with the help of Reed and Strange, is completely cured. Later, Marvel decides to force an end to the Skrull-Kree war using the Omega Wave to tell the leaders to make peace. But they ignore him and ruin the machine, so Marvel sets out to destroy their weapons himself. Meanwhile, Reed discovers that what they used to cure Marvel has mutated and is spreading a deadly form of cancer wherever he goes. Silver Surfer breaks through Galactus' barrier and tries to warn Marvel, but thinking he's been sent by the Skrull or Kree, Marvel attacks him. After a long battle, Surfer finally gets Marvel to see what he's caused. Strange appears with a cure for Marvel's people, telling them Reed found it thanks to Rick Jones and has already cured Earth. Marvel realizes the danger he is to all humanoids and tells Strange to banish him to the plane of Rashnu, which Elysius accompanies him to. And the story ends showing that Marvel has technically accomplished his mission, as the Skrull and Kree are nearly extinct, thus can no longer wage war. This story's okay, but the cancer virus makes things goofily melodramatic, and I'm pretty sure they could have thought of another way to stop Marvel spreading the disease in the permanent exile. Also, Ben Grimm dies, so that's a bummer. What if the Fantastic Four had lost the trial of Galactus? Galactus decides not to interfere in Reed's trial for helping Galactus destroy the Skrull homeworld, thus Reed is executed. The rest of the team are teleported back to Earth, but mad with revenge, they take a confiscated Skrull ship back to the Shi'ar homeworld. They use Annihilus' cosmic control rod to upgrade the ship's weapons to blow through the defenses, but underestimate its force and accidentally blow up the planet. Overcome with guilt, they return to Earth and warn of potential retaliation, which comes to pass as Shi'ar Guardian Gladiator convinces all allied species to destroy Earth. During the rally, the Skrulls steal the Omega Wave, which they plan to use to detonate all enemy warships right after they vaporize Earth to regain supremacy. The remaining Fantastic Four decide to return to Shi'ar space to try to barter for the Earth's life, but find the Skrull trap hidden on Mars' moon Deimos. And with seconds before the Armada arrives, they destroy it, taking themselves and the entire moon with it. Sensing the good deed the team has done for them, Gladiator calls off the demolition, instead welcoming Earth into their alliance. This is pretty good, and you do share their shock when they accidentally destroy an entire planet, though the happy ending seems a little forced. But more importantly, chicken wings used to cost only $5 a dozen. What if Wolverine battled Conan? Near the end of the Dark Phoenix saga, instead of throwing an intruding Logan out of his outpost, the Watcher passively banishes him to the age of Conan. Much later, Logan mugs someone for money, only for Red Sonja to ambush him. Logan wins, and Sonja offers herself to him, but he settles for drinks and introductions. Sonja notices Conan, and they follow him into a temple, where he tells the wizard Corinthes that if Conan brings Corinthes to Zukola, Zukola will resurrect his love Belit. Sonja intervenes and is knocked out, causing Logan to lash out at Conan. Using a mystical blade, Conan is a match for Logan's claws and strikes the final blow, seemingly killing him. Logan's healing factor saves him, and he wakes up hours later, but the immense blood loss damages his brain, turning him feral. Logan Logan tracks down Sonya right before she's sacrificed by Conan, and they fight again, Logan cutting off Conan's hand. Zukala discovers Logan's homeworld and offers to send him back, also summoning a demon when Conan tries to flee with Sonya. Their plight gets through to Logan and he destroys the demon, but Conan falls through the portal meant for Logan. Logan kills Zukala and they escape the crumbling temple. Logan's brain eventually heals and he goes off on his own adventures with Sonya as his wife, while Conan is transported to the X-Men and inadvertently prevents them from stopping Jean Grey, allowing the Phoenix to destroy the universe. While I still don't follow the Conan stories, this was a great adventure and made me wish they did make a Wolverine the Barbarian series. What if Kraven had killed Spider-Man? Instead of burying Spider-Man alive, Kraven just straight up shoots him. Quite insane by this point, Kraven takes Peter's costume for his own and goes out to wreak havoc. Mary Jane worries about Peter and goes looking for him, only to get mugged and have Kraven savage her would-be attackers as Spider-Man, confirming he's not Peter. His rampage doesn't go unnoticed, and Johnny, Matt, and Steve all head out to stop him. They finally find him and he defeats them all, convincing each he's an imposter, especially after Mary Jane reveals that Peter is Spider-Man. Weeks later, Jonah is nearly killed by Vermin, only for Kraven to nearly kill Vermin, and the three heroes arrive just in time to stop him. Kraven nearly escapes, and they catch him eating Peter's body, finally taking him down. Kraven is locked up forever, and Mary Jane is told of Peter's fate, who also tries to tell Aunt May about Peter's double life, but she won't listen. After the funeral, the four try to clear Peter's name at a press conference, only for Jonah to barge in and claim it's all a cover-up. He attacks the heroes, and the papers interpret it as the other way around, turning the public against them and making superheroes illegal. And it ends with Mary Jane swearing she'll clear Peter's name one day. This is a weird one, and I don't know whether to laugh or be depressed, but at least the living recorder's getting work. What if that's too long to say? Doom is allowed to continue at school after his scarring accident and graduates with honors while practicing the arcane arts on his own. Thus, Doom meets the team while Reed and Sue are still students, Ben is still a pilot, and Johnny is still a child. Everyone's staying at the same boarding house. While Reed and Ben are out, Doom steals Reed's space warp projector, intending to use it to rescue his mother. The team break into a radio station and use it to track Reed's projector, but are immediately captured by Doom when they find it. They escape and fight off Doom's robots, but Doom finishes his incantations and opens the portal to Hell and his mother. However, the energy released knocks out Doom and threatens to destroy the world, save for the pentagram area the team huddle in. Stu uses Johnny's remote control car to draw another pentagram around Reed's projector, reversing everything back through the portal, including the device. Reed is somehow able to access the projector from its new location and opens a new portal, returning Doom's mother. However, the fact Reed was able to do what Doom couldn't destroys the last of Doom's reasoning, and he swears to eliminate Reed. And it ends with the team promising each other they'll meet again, hinting they'll still one day become the Fantastic Four. This was fun, and it's nice to see the younger team demonstrate their talents and teamwork, even before gaining superpowers. But now I want to see a sitcom starring Doom and his mother from Hell. What if Vision conquered the world? In the first reality, during a time when Vision interlinked with all computers to control the world, his mind completely abandons his body, fully uploading to all networks. Thus, with the United Nations support, he is accepted as supreme ruler, completely abolishing war, crime, and economy, and strategically redirecting talent and resources to places that need improvement. With Earth perfected, focus switches to space and beyond. Centuries later, as Earth's reach grows, the Skrull and Kree band together as a last resort to keep their empires, planning to crash Halley's Comet into Earth. But they're stopped by the Cosmic Avengers, and while there are casualties, the race's hostilities cease, and Vision sees a future where they're accepted as friends. In another reality, Genosha sees Vision as a threat and nukes all of New York during the meeting, killing most heroes and eventually leading to the collapse of technology, economy, and government. With no other option, Vision allies with Doom, Hydra, Thinker, and Kingpin, who band together and conquer the world, creating an oppressive society where freedom is non-existent. This Earth eventually sends forces to conquer space, enslaving or annihilating each race it comes across, and forming an alliance with the Skrull and Kree. The three massive empires conquer the rest of known space, before Vision abruptly reduces the Skrull and Kree to conquered species as well. Great stories, and easy to see one or the other happening in this universe. Even the Skrull turning blue. Dubbity-dubbity. What if Spider-Man had not married Mary Jane? In the battle with the Spider Slayer, Mary Jane is nearly killed. Peter realizes he can't keep putting her in danger and calls off the wedding. Frustrated by his decision, Peter becomes angrier and more reckless, even joining Wildpack to blow off steam. A visit to Aunt May makes him realize what he's missing, thus he gets back with Felicia. They make a great crime-fighting duo despite Felicia's tendency towards violence, but when Felicia saves him when Kraven buries Peter alive, he lets it slip he still cares for Mary Jane. And Felicia's brashness and love of violence makes Peter nervous. Nevertheless, Peter proposes to Felicia, who accepts and goes straight to Mary Jane to rub it in her face. But someone overhears Felicia's bragging, realizing she revealed Spider-Man's identity. Continued in What If Spider-Man Had Married the Black Cat, they marry but find their secret identities and contrasting personalities roadblocks in their relationship. Meanwhile, the stranger sells Peter's identity to the Vulture, who nearly kills Aunt May and later Felicia, barely stopped by Peter. Peter almost kills Vulture, but Wildpack takes him off his hands, Peter instead confronting Felicia about revealing his secret before leaving her forever. Later, Vulture is seemingly killed by Peter, leading to his arrest by Wildpack, but Mary Jane and Felicia intervene, Felicia admitting she did it. Peter saves Mary Jane from falling, but in the confusion, Felicia is killed. Much later, Peter recovers and is shown attempting a relationship with Silver Sable. Again, Spider-Man's stories seem to be the best of the series. Don't know why it had to be 2 issues, though. What if Silver Surfer had not escaped Earth? Champion never visits Earth to help him escape Galactus' barrier, thus Silver Surfer instead joins the Fantastic Four, again renaming themselves Fantastic Five. Despite making an unstoppable team, Silver isn't happy and distances himself from their personal lives. One day, the team are called to investigate a church haunting, only to be teleported to Hell and its rule and longtime Silver Surfer antagonist Mephisto, who gleefully tortures the heroes. Silver shows he's a force to be reckoned with, so Mephisto promises to release the rest of the team and completely remove his presence from Earth if Silver stays forever, killing Johnny to prove he's serious. Silver agrees, and the rest of the team reluctantly leave. Without Mephisto's presence, the world no longer knows temptation, all wars and conflicts ceasing, and even heroes retiring in this age of peace. Only for evil to rise again, this time created from within humankind. Silver continues to taunt Mephisto in hell, finally making him angry enough to kill Silver. But once he does, Silver reappears in spirit form, his light of purity tormenting Mephisto, and since their bargain is for him to remain in hell forever, Mephisto must also endure it forever. This one's short, simple, and a lot of fun. I don't see why Johnny had to die, but the twist at the end is brilliant. So more importantly, artist Jack Abel manages the Yanks in this universe. What if the new X-Men had never existed? The original X-Men team defeat Krakatoa by themselves, so no other team is recruited. Later, the team is ambushed by Eric the Red, and since they weren't recruited to be heroes, he has Proudstar and Nightcrawler in tow. They easily take them down, with Nightcrawler escaping and the rest imprisoned. Later still, after new events that stop Jean Grey turning into Dark Phoenix, Lilandra of the Shi'ar recruit them to stop the Macron crystal from shattering and releasing the end of all that is. Which, after a fierce battle and being teleported into the crystal, they do. After a multitude of events, Scott asks Jean to marry him, but a psychic barrier stops her from accepting, which, much later, they discover was the work of Mastermind. But before they can fight, they're teleported back to meet Lilandra, who explains that the Phoenix is about to emerge from Earth's sun and consume worlds. After studying it, Scott finds it can be destroyed if it's planted in a new host, who he volunteers to be. However, he's knocked out at the last second and replaced by Nightcrawler, who reveals he's been watching the X-Men and knows how heroic they are, so he sacrifices himself so they can forever remain a team. Yeah, this is the first of the new series I don't like. It's again mostly just a retelling of events I'm unfamiliar with, so I had no idea what was going on. The Nightcrawler arc feels shoved in, and I don't feel anything majorly different was accomplished. Just skip this one like everyone skipped New Mutants. What if Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires? This time when Dracula kidnapped Storm, he turned her fully vampiric and loyal to him, and they both take down Nightcrawler, Colossus, and Logan. Dracula drains all the heroes of blood, killing them and recruiting two into his undead army, but Logan, with his healing ability, survives as a vampire and inherits all of Dracula's powers, killing Dracula but also turning Logan evil. He and his undead friends attack other humans and mutants to add to his army, also killing Doctor Strange before he finds a spell that eliminates vampires. They conquer most of New York, forcing the government to quarantine the entire area. Strange's spirit returns to New York and enters the mind of the Punisher, the last hero not dead or a vampire, telling him to go to his mansion and find the dark hold that contains a spell. Using Strange's cape and amulet and his own arsenal of vampire weapons, Frank fights off the vampirized superheroes, but Logan intercepts him before he reaches the book. Frank proves to be more than a match for Logan and nearly finishes him off, only to accidentally kill Kitty Pryde when she materializes in front of him. In the confusion, Logan kills Frank, releasing Strange's astral form, who tells Logan he has a chance to redeem himself. Logan casts away his evil persona and reads the Darkhold, killing all vampires, including himself. This was awesome, and I wish we could have seen more. If Marvel Zombies could have a million series, why not Marvel Vampires? What if the heroes had lost Atlantis attacks? During this event, crucial superheroes are dead or unavailable, and Set conquers the world, killing or turning humanity and most super beings into mindless lizard people. Thor gathers the remaining supers, hero and villain alike, to decide what to do next. They agree that to stop Set from conquering other worlds, they must kill the brides, former heroines brainwashed to carry his offspring. A massive battle breaks out where they make short work of the now evil reptile super beings, but are no match for the more powerful and sentient brides, who kill most of them. Thor and Silver Surfer take out two of Set's heads, but it absorbs Phoenix and forces them to retreat. Quasar finds Strange's Eye of Agamotto in Set's home dimension and uses it to trap Set and himself forever, but too late to stop Set's children from being born and invading the multiverse, where they consume every world and produce offspring to consume more universes, including our own. This is a short and dour, but still interesting story, though if they can cross realities, doesn't that mean that even if the heroes stopped them in the main series, there would be a reality where they didn't, thus all universes would still be invaded? What if the Punisher had killed Daredevil? During the Child's Play arc, Punisher tranquilizes Daredevil on a roof, but he's too close to the edge and falls to his death, his body later found and identified as Matt, and the news is made public. Spider-Man swears vengeance and relentlessly hunts Frank down, but Frank shoots him when he gets too close and he falls to the street below, where he's also unmasked and revealed to the world, resulting in Aunt May assassinated. Most heroes are ordered by the president not to go after Frank, but Cloak and Dagger seemingly kill him at the docks. Meanwhile, Foggy gives Ulrich a lot of dirt on politicians and is published in the Bugle, with most names resigning. But both are later also assassinated. Frank is shown to be alive and learned that most of what's happened was all a scheme by Kingpin to scare off the heroes and crime families and put his lackeys in power. Peter ambushes Frank when he storms Kingpin's outpost, and Frank is forced to kill Peter, but it tires him out and he's powerless to prevent Kingpin from killing him. But not before Kingpin receives a mysterious package Frank earlier mailed that blows them all to pieces. This is a great story and throwback to older mystery movies, helped by Frank and Ulrich's narrations. Though Frank already had a bomb for Kingpin, why did he rush in when he knew he was in no condition to? What if Namor had joined the Fantastic Four? The team find Johnny right before he awakens Namor's memories, thus when Namor learns Atlantis is gone, Reed talks some sense into him and convinces him to join, creating the Fantastic Five. They prove to be an unstoppable force and Sue falls head over heels for him, completely ignoring Reed. Eventually Namor proposes to Sue and she accepts, crushing Reed, who at the wedding resigns from the team. Under Namor's leadership, the team flourishes, with Reed starting a new research center to benefit the team and all humankind. Later, Reed hires a new assistant named Lisette, who's secreted a spy working for Doom, who slowly poisons Reed with a neurotoxin until he's weak enough for Doom to capture and forced to do his bidding. They infiltrate the tower where Doom nearly kills Sue and Namor, but Reed regains enough will to defy Doom, and with Lisette's help, the team fight Doom back. Reed is severely injured, but Lisette keeps him stable until he can get help, and he makes a full recovery of them later marrying. The two couples eventually have children, and they create a superhero team of their own. This is another sweet and simple one, and it's great to see these heroes heroes find love. Also, Blackbeard exists in this universe. What if, that's too long to say, Steve stops the assassination of Dr. Erskine, thus the super soldier formula isn't lost. Instead, it's used to enhance and train 500 men under Steve's command, who are then dropped into the center of Germany and make quick work of the Nazi forces, including Hitler and the Red Skull. With the war over and camps liberated, the army heads home, only to be sunk by a rogue U-boat, killing everyone but Steve. With Fury gone, Steve found S.H.I.E.L.D., which becomes a new army of super soldiers, ending the Soviet Union and liberating the world from tyranny. Steve is elected president, but it's revealed he's become a fascist and white supremacist, killing anyone who even remotely disagrees with him. All non-Caucasians are kept in concentration camps, while civilians Steve deems worthy get temporary serum boosts. Any threat to the serum superiority is also destroyed, including many future heroes. Much later, Namor is chased into the water by super soldiers, regaining his memory, and after discovering Atlantis ruined, blames the surface world. He proves more than a match for the soldiers and plots his revenge, swimming to the frozen north and finding a still frozen Steve Rogers. So who's actually ruling America? Answers next issue. What if Captain America had formed the Avengers? Following from last issue, S.H.I.E.L.D. tracks down Namor and captures him, also taking the frozen Steve with them. Steve defrosts and attacks the soldiers, disabling them. Namor tells him everything that has happened, and Steve vows to put it right, saying they need to form a team, comprised of himself, Namor, and former S.H.I.E.L.D. soldier Frank Castle, who was wearing a prototype Iron Man suit. Calling themselves the Avengers, they track down any heroes who haven't been killed off, including Logan, who becomes the Hulk, and Sam, who becomes Giant Man, but trying to recruit Magneto proves fruitless. They infiltrate the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, also freeing and recruiting Thor, and Steve breaks into the serum plant, where he also discovers a still alive Erskine, and that the imposter Steve is actually Red Skull in a cloned Steve body. Erskine sacrifices himself to save Steve, and Steve throws Red Skull into a computer panel, electrocuting him. The Avengers fight to the death against the S.H.I.E.L.D. army, and their sacrifice is immortalized later when the country is free of tyranny. For the most part, this story arc is pretty good, sort of a new take on the original series issue 44, but how did the world magically go back to normal? Who recorded the Avengers' sacrifice, and why did they sacrifice themselves when Steve could have just taken Red Skull's place as leader? Yeah, this story has some great hero amalgamation, so I guess it's all good. What if the Fantastic Four's second child had lived? In the first story, Sue's second pregnancy is weird from the start, her getting weaker as it goes, and she doesn't survive the delivery. The baby lives and is also named Sue, but Franklin immediately mistrusts her, noticing anyone near her seems to have the life slowly drained from them and eventually dies, including Alicia and Johnny. Ben is mysteriously cured of being the Thing, but is shot and dies the same way. Reed refuses to listen to him, so Franklin goes to Doom and begs him to see for himself. Doom confirms Franklin's theory and asks to study Sue, but Reed, completely off the rails, tries to kill them both. They knock him back, and Sue reveals that she is indeed a demon that feeds off living energy, as she proves by killing Reed and Doom. Franklin blasts her into the negative zone, then grieves over the fact everyone he's ever loved is dead. In the next story, the pregnancy goes just fine, and they have a daughter named Mary. Besides the fact she can fly, she lives a mostly normal life, until it's revealed she also has advanced healing powers, able to heal anyone and anything. She dedicates herself to good causes, angering the corporate and political heads who finally order her assassination. At a rally in Washington, Guy Ritchie, disguised as Captain America, tries to kill Mary, saying he's defending true Americans. A riot breaks out, but Mary uses her powers to calm the crowd before passing out. Weeks later, she finds that she has the support of most of the nation, and she leads them to a new, much better USA. Both are pretty good. I usually hate evil kid stories, but it's short enough to not be annoying. The other is pretty self-righteous, but still inspiring and means well. We've read better, but these are still entertaining. Also, we eventually did get Valeria Richards. What if Spider-Man had kept his cosmic powers? Sensing Peter's sense of responsibility, the Captain Universe powers stay with him. From there, his battles become insultingly easy, beating multiple villains without breaking a sweat, but his powers make him overly smug, and he starts to worry his wife, other heroes, and even some villains with his new personality. Aunt May accidentally discovers his identity, landing her in the hospital, and after he returns from bringing Saddam Hussein to justice, Mary Jane says she's done with him and leaves. Frustrated, Peter abducts Thor to help him make Africa a fertile land, but Thor tells him that they need to let humanity take care of itself. They start to fight, only for Doom to drain Thor of his power with his new ray gun. Doom brings the original Captain Universe as a hostage, but Peter ignores his threats and Doom kills him. And then I think both the essences of Captain Universe and Spider-Man emerge from Peter and fight each other, with Spider-Man telling him to stay out of his life, so Captain Universe instead possesses Doom, only to find he's a Doom bot and returns to Peter, who destroys the robot. Peter then uses Captain Universe's power to unite all of Earth's minds together, bringing a brief sense of unity to all and hopefully an era of peace at the cost of his universe and spider powers. And it ends revealing Peter's newborn kid is the new Captain Universe. I'm sorry, this one's awful. It makes no sense. It's super rushed. Peter is despicable, and the artwork and color choices are horrible. I can barely tell what's going on. This is the first one I straight up hate, so just skip it. What if Phoenix had not died? If that sounds familiar, yes, it's a new take on the original issue 27. Jean Grey is again knocked out and lobotomized with a Shi'ar, but this time she and Scott leave the X-Men to have a normal life. Weeks later, Jean has a breakdown over the loss of her powers. Scott tries to comfort her, only for Magneto to intrude, forcing Jean to accompany him to Asteroid M, where he reveals he can restore Jean's Phoenix powers. The X-Men show up to rescue Jean, and a battle against Magneto begins. Jean is highly tempted to regain her powers, but the guilt of what she did with them overcomes her and she refuses, destroying the rejuvenation chamber. Magneto lets them go, and regular life continues for Jean, graduating school, becoming a teacher, and eventually having a daughter named Rachel. While the X-Men are gone during Secret Wars, Mastermind breaks in and tortures Jean, but when she fights back, he's revealed to actually be the Shadow King, who kills Jean and kidnaps Rachel. But it turns out Jean is actually Phoenix, who resurrects herself fully powered, revealing that the real Jean is in an underwater cocoon, who Phoenix accidentally destroys. The story continuing next issue. What if the Phoenix rose again? Following from the last issue, Phoenix tracks down Shadow King, only to find he's already aged and possessed Rachel. Phoenix unleashes her full power, destroying him forever and restoring Rachel to her original body. She returns home around the same time the X-Men come back and pretends everything is normal. Years later, anti-mutant sentiment is at its highest in the government, so Phoenix uses her powers to convince the president to repeal all anti-mutant laws. cause, which leads to his assassination and the Sentinels taking complete control of the country, killing most heroes. After Logan tries to kill Jean and Scott and Xavier learn she's actually Phoenix, she leaves everyone behind. The remaining heroes attack the Sentinel headquarters, but they're ambushed, forcing Phoenix to return, but even she's restrained by their force fields. Kitty and Nightcrawler sacrifice themselves to free Phoenix, and she destroys the building and all Sentinels. After the war, Phoenix and Scott try to reconcile, but destiny reveals Phoenix will eventually destroy all mortals she tries to live with, so she escapes into space and becomes a cosmic being again. Great story, even if it feels a little choppy trying to get all these plot points into one narrative, and it ends more optimistically than the original What If Phoenix story. What if no one was watching The Watcher? Like issue 34 of the original series, this is an anthology of joke stories, but this time including 2 actual narratives. In What If Thanos changed Galactus into a human being, Thanos uses the Infinity Gauntlet to turn Galactus human, erase his memory, and drop him off in Kansas. There he's mistaken for Elvis and lives with a fan named Gertrude, who hides him in a trailer park, but he eventually goes public and is truly thought to be Elvis. Adam Warlock returns bearing the gauntlet and offers to restore Galactus, but it ends showing he's happy as he is. In What If Spider-Man had a son, Peter and Mary Jane have a half-spider mutant kid, and when Mary Jane has to attend a photo shoot and Peter can't get the Sandman to babysit, he has to take his kid with him to stop supervillains. He tries to keep him out of the way, but the kid escapes and ends up helping Peter, absorbing Hydro Man with his diaper and causing Speed Demon to slip on his drool and knock himself and Backlash out, and Peter couldn't be prouder. And the rest are just short, mostly one-panel jokes, most of which are pretty funny, like asking what if you were Spider-Man or Red Skull, then revealing you wouldn't want to be. I like the Elvis story, I hate the Spider-Kid story, and the rest fall somewhere in between, though I will say I like this issue more than the original one, if just because there are fewer jokes so the ones present have more of a chance to breathe and develop. Though try getting away with this Howard the Duck joke today. What if, that's again too long to say, in this beginning to the multi-part event series Timequake, the Timekeepers reveal they must destroy several alternate realities to maintain their presence, allowing the Watcher to watch. In this story, Spider-Man joins the Fantastic Five as in the original What If series, but Sue never leaves Reed, thus the Fantastic Five remain united and live out their regular series adventures, just with Peter along for the ride. Thus he's with them when the team travel into the negative zone to find the element that will save Sue and the unborn Franklin. Peter is captured and taken to Annihilus, but he escapes, taking the control rod that's unknowingly what they need to save Sue, and using it to save the rest of the team. They take the rod to go save Sue, but because the Keepers can't allow this version of Franklin to be born, they recruit Doom to ambush them and take the rod himself. He's stopped by Annihilus and they fight, with the rest of the team trying to figure out how to get the rod back. Suddenly, Doom is abducted by a being known as the Whisperer, who tells him that the Keepers lied to him and saying the rod would let him get his mother back, and that if he didn't help Reed save Sue, Reed would eventually destroy the world. Thus he gives it to Reed and sacrifices himself to make sure they escape. Sue and Franklin survive and the Keepers are thwarted, with the Watcher the only one who saw the Whisperer. But what if, again too long to say, after the events of the good ending of this series issue 19, the Keepers seek to destroy this reality's vision, thus they redirect Korvac to this alternate universe. Later, the Cosmic Avengers disable a still hostile Kree-Skrull ship, but when they board it, they're all immediately captured and hypnotized by Korvac, who has also brainwashed the original Guardians of the Galaxy and seeks to conquer Vision. Using the teams, Korvac infiltrates Vision's main computer center and interfaces with Vision's system, directly fighting for control. Vision contacts Earth about the danger, so the future son of Nick Fury, John Fury, is sent with his space commandos to stop the invasion. The brainwashed heroes handily defeat most of the forces, but the Whisperer again intervenes, showing Fury the future ahead and telling him to use ultrasound to break the heroes from their trance, bringing the Avengers but not the Guardians. But after a battle and recalibration, all heroes are freed and rushed to the command room, only to find Korvac has displaced Vision. The future Iron Man hacks into Korvac's mortal form and manages to erase his presence from the system, but Vision is truly gone. The Keepers technically win and move on to their next targets. What if, yeah, I'm not going to read any event titles, in an alternate version of issue 24, Logan kills the Punisher before Strange finds him, thus the vampires are never defeated. This reality's version of the Inferno arc begins, with Mr. Sinister fighting through Strange's mansion to steal the Darkhold and read the spell that destroys vampires, but Mandolin can't wait that long, opening a portal and sending the demons from Limbo to Earth, which Logan and his mutant vampires engage in battle, even killing Sim. Dormammu notices the conflict and, well, comes to bargain with Mandolin, offering his forces in exchange for co-ruling the multiverse, which he accepts. His armies decimate the mutants and the rest retreat, only for Mr. Sinister to show up with the Darkhold. He could defeat all remaining vampires, but instead says he'll help Logan if afterwards they leave Earth forever. Logan agrees, and the remaining mutants are given immense power to not only destroy the forces on Earth, but follow him back to Limbo and fight Dormammu and Mandolin personally. Mandolin and the vampire Jean Grey face off, with Jean meant to die to preserve the Keepers, but the Whisperer intervenes, telling Jean to become the Phoenix to make sure everyone loses, which she does, vaporizing Mandolin and Dormammu and ensuring the vampire mutants have to leave. But Mr. Sinister shows he's ready to clone the X-Men, meaning Jean Grey technically lives again, and this time one of the Keepers vanishes, and the Time Variant Authority notice a catastrophe about to emerge. What if Thor was a thrall of Seth? Okay, that was short enough to say. This time it's a new universe, where at the end of the Thor-Seth arc, Odin is defeated instead of Seth. Thor and his friends go to save him, but Thor's friends are killed, and Odin's mind has been completely possessed by Seth, who imprisons Thor in the dungeon. The Godheads convene to determine what to do, and vote to rally their pantheons against Seth, even if it means destroying Asgard. Meanwhile, Thor is freed by the previously seen Iron Man from the future, Vampire Logan, and the seemingly dead Doctor Doom, all of whom the Whisperer recruited into their own force, and with Thor rounding the team out, they reveal that they have assembled to prevent Asgard's destruction and destroy the Keepers, another of whom blinks out of existence. As Seth and Loki drain Odin's power, the team ambush them, the final Keeper sending a Protectroid to strengthen the villains. The battle is fierce, fierce, but the heroes win, and the final Keeper is wiped from the universe. But it turns out the Whisperer was actually Immortus, who was imprisoned by Limbo by the Keepers but escaped, and now nothing stands in his way of conquering time itself. And meanwhile, the Time Variant Authority panics. What if the Watcher saved the universe? There, I said that one too. The Time Variant Authority revealed to the Watcher that Immortus has become so powerful he could easily take over all of time and even destroy them. They try to use the heroes to alter a moment in Immortus' past and erase his existence, but Immortus traps the team in a time loop. The Watcher then suggests they go all the way back to right when Nathaniel Richards discovered the time machine that would one day let him become Immortus and stop those events from happening, and they agree. They send the alternate Fantastic Four team from the original series issue 6 to convince Nathaniel to stop what he's doing, but he doesn't listen, killing them all. As a last resort, they send the Fantastic Four from original series issue 36 and never got powers, who are normal enough for Nathaniel to listen to and know they're telling the truth, allowing them to inject him with a formula that will give him a weakness to time energy and causing the future Immortus to explode. Everything's put back to normal, including the Keepers, who were the Time Twisters in disguise, aborted attempts at the Keepers, who, thanks to Immortus, were never erased, but now that he's gone, they never existed, and the real Keepers reappear. Thus, all of time is saved. Do I need to say this arc is awesome? Because it is! Like if the Loki series and the What If Season 1 finale were combined with great callbacks to stories from the current and previous series. Even that Fantastic Four team I said I didn't like shines through here. Highly recommended, though read as much of the actual series as you can first. What if Storm of the X-Men had remained a thief? Storm never goes to Africa and meets Xavier. Instead, she continues pickpocketing on the streets of Cairo, where she meets a man named Herman Hassel, who takes her to New York and inducts her into his crime family under the name Jack Black. Later, she's assaulted, but saved by a prostitute, who's arrested along with Storm. She can't handle being locked up, and her mutant powers manifest, impressing Herman, who uses her powers for his own ends. Years later, Storm continues her trade, but starts to feel guilty about taking so much. The X-Men break into Herman's base of operations, stealing back a powerful gemstone and terrifying Herman. When Storm hears what happened, she furiously flies over to Xavier's school, where she fights with Nightcrawler, Colossus, and Logan. She teaches them a lesson and escapes, only to meet with Xavier, who explains the gem they took was very important for their cause. She's invited to join, but she's put off by their wealth and luxury, saying she can't live in their world, but it does encourage her to find her actual place in the world, also quitting Herman's business and retiring to secluded Africa. I don't see the sense of this one. It's not bad, but there's not enough to be invested in, and it feels mean-spirited in calling the X-Men hypocrites. It also feels shorter than usual, but the scans I have were missing a few pages, so it's probably just my fault. What if the Avengers had fought Galactus? The Fantastic Four die before their adventures begin, thus Doom becomes an ally of Fury, Namor is never found, and Captain America remains frozen. The Avengers operate mostly as normal, just without Steve, and eventually notice weird transparent environmental storms all over the world, which they learn were caused by the Watcher trying and failing to shield their world from Silver Surfer, who signals Galactus. Tony knocks him from his board, but nothing they do phases Galactus, who passively disables two of them. All Avengers assemble to fight Galactus, ignoring the Watcher trying to stop them, and they prove a handful for Galactus, even destroying his Punisher robot. But he finally tires of them, and he and Silver Surfer knock them all out. Meanwhile, Tony is sent to find the ultimate nullifier, but Galactus' ship defenses detect and render him unconscious. With no other recourse, the Watcher breaks his oath and battles Galactus himself, but Galactus is even too powerful for him, feeding on his energy instead. Satiated, Galactus does the service of returning the Watcher's body to his people, though Silver Surfer's request to stay behind and learn why Watcher sacrificed himself for this planet is granted. Everyone recovers and life continues, with Silver Surfer joining the Avengers. This one's fine, but the artwork and writing style feel outdated for the year it was published. Like it was made for the original series, but not published until years later. Even Watcher comments he waited to tell the story. Still, at the time of it was a shock to see the Watcher die, besides the other times he has. What if Spider-Man had kept his 6 arms? Morbius is eaten by sharks, thus Peter can't use his blood to reverse the formula that resulted in him growing 4 new arms. Kurt Connors helps Peter's attempts to find a cure, but the strain turns him back into the lizard. Peter's extra arms help subdue the lizard and turn him back, but before Kurt gives up, he tells Peter to check with Xavier. The X-Men attack him on sight, but Xavier intervenes and tells him he will try to help, but later concludes the mutation is irreversible and just tells Peter to make the best of it. He gets the same response from Reed, but his frustration is interrupted by the news announcing an attack by Doc Ock, who demands to see Spider-Man. Peter obliges, aided greatly by his new appendages, and over time, he and the public get used to his new image. Months later, Reed develops gloves that cloak Peter's new arms, allowing him to return to his normal life, but not daring to find love for fear of them discovering his mutation. After Aunt May dies, Peter dedicates himself entirely to Spider-Man, and his lack of a personal life means he becomes a much fiercer hero, also dedicating himself to helping other people with disabilities. This one is passable, but I fail to see how having extra arms is a disability, especially since they ultimately help Peter and he's still able to have a mostly normal life. It feels like they're trying to support a cause they have no knowledge of. And why couldn't they just amputate the extra arms, since I'm pretty sure most of the people he talked to would have that technology? I guess the same reason they couldn't heal a bullet wound in one more day. What if Wolverine had married Mariko? The Mastermind doesn't interfere with their wedding, thus Logan and Mariko are married. Logan decides to remain in Japan and leaves the X-Men. Later, Logan hunts down the Yakuza threatening his clan, trying in vain to find the face behind the organization. As a last resort, they recruit Mariko's half-brother, the Silver Samurai, who works directly for the leader, and despite some bad blood between he and Logan, he gives up his employer's name. Logan storms a stronghold to find the Yakuza leader is Kingpin, who explains that Japan is more stable than America, thus he's moved his criminal underworld there. He refuses to leave Logan's family alone, thus a long period of war follows, with Logan's connections decimated and he's also almost killed. But he's saved by Sunfire, who helps turn the tables, thus Kingpin challenges Logan to a winner-take-all one-on-one duel. He accepts, even foregoing his claws in favor of his family's katana as a sign of honor, and they fight. Logan almost wins, but Silver Samurai betrays him, killing Mariko. Logan kills him, giving the Kingpin just enough time to flee. Kingpin reminds him that without Mariko or Silver Samurai, Logan is an outsider and holds no power in the family, so Kingpin will make sure they choose someone under his power as the new lead, only for Sunfire to torch Kingpin in his limo. With nothing keeping him there, Logan relinquishes control to Sunfire and moves back to America, rejoining the X-Men. This is fine, mostly just a couple big fight scenes, but they're exciting and it's always nice to see Kingpin totaled. What if Venom had possessed the Punisher? Frank gets to the church before Eddie, thus the symbiote possesses him instead. He tests it out and loves it, seeing it as the best weapon against crime he's ever had, even finding it can create guns and bullets. His vendetta becomes more and more violent, and eventually Peter and Matt notice. The symbiote nearly kills Microchip before it can interfere, then it goes after and nearly kills Peter, but Frank wrests control just long enough to call it off. He later goes after the Kingpin, where he's stopped by Matt, but he manages to work around him and kills Kingpin. The symbiote then directs Frank to look for Spider-Man, killing criminals along the way, and is ambushed by Peter, Matt, and Mark. Completely in control and nearly kills the heroes, shrugging off the sonic blaster Peter borrowed from the Fantastic Four. However, it suddenly stops and Frank begins a mental battle against it for control. Frank uses his intense focus to make it swear to him, promising he'll kill himself if he has to stop it. Thus, he's put back in permanent control of his body and goes off to continue his war on crime. This is great! A very compelling look at the chaos of the symbiote having to deal with the discipline of the Punisher, and I think they make a cute couple. What if Barbara Ketchum become Ghost Rider? Danny is shot down before he finds the talisman, so his sister Barbara crawls over to him and inadvertently touches it, turning into Ghost Rider and attacking the gang, but she can't kill Deathwatch and he runs off. She escapes the police and later mourns Danny's passing, all while trying to figure out who she is now. She sees the spirit of vengeance in a dream and wrestles with it for control, taking its power and using it to murder Deathwatch and all her other villains, though suffering great pain each time as she loses another piece of humanity. She horrifies Spider-Man by killing Hobgoblin, leading him to visit Doctor Strange for a solution, who has also recruited the original Ghost Rider Johnny Blaze. They trick her into thinking Deathwatch is still alive before trapping the spirit of vengeance in a pentagram and separating it from Barbara, but Johnny accidentally ruins the pentagram, setting the spirit free, who flies off to find a new host. And it ends with Barbara admitting she was wrong and dying right after. This is fun, but predictable. Barbara basically does what non-readers think Ghost Rider does anyway, so there's not much tension, and Johnny barely contributes to the story. Also, it feels really rushed, with a lot of big panels taking up most of the pages. Still, it's Ghost Rider, and those have to try to be boring. What if Cable had destroyed the X-Men? Xavier escapes the Skrulls early, returning to Earth to see mutant kind hunted and in disarray. He calls for immediate reparations, but not everyone wants to listen to him, thinking he abandoned them and they've moved on, including Cable, who's become the mutant leader in absence of Xavier, and who's tired of living in fear of humanity and wants to prove they're not something to be messed with. In response, Xavier orders him and the new mutants imprisoned before they can cause more damage. Civil war breaks out, with Cable and those loyal to him fleeing, Xavier swearing he'll stop them at any cost. But Cable blows up the restaurant Xavier, Scott, and Jean are at, killing them all. The remaining mutants split apart as Logan and his group go to hunt down Cable, and the remaining X-Men are stretched thin by worldwide anti-mutant and rogue mutant groups and sudden strikes by their longtime antagonists. Logan and his group finally find Cable and his army, and in the ensuing fight, Logan kills Cable. Meanwhile, all the X-Men's foes attack at once, killing multiple X-Men and forcing the others to abandon the mansion, which is then blown up. With all of mutant kind in disarray and humanity hating them more than ever, Magneto sees his chance to unite the mutants against the world. The results next issue. What if Magneto took over the USA? After the events of the last issue, Magneto unites all remaining mutants and marches on the White House, taking the government hostage and claiming the building as his new headquarters. However, the president pushes the button and once again releases the Sentinels upon the world, which wastes no time in killing or capturing every mutant and super being they come across, including all of Logan's team, who's barely sane by this point. They also implement martial law and restrict the rights of all humanity, herding dissenters into concentration camps. Storm and Psylocke break into the White House only to be caught by Magneto. The Sentinels attack and Magneto confidently fights them off, only for one to drop a nuclear warhead, vaporizing them all. Much later, after the Sentinels have conquered the world, Logan breaks several mutants out of a camp and leads them to the ruins of the mansion, where he announces he's restarting the X-Men to hopefully bring back peace among humans and mutants. And that's seriously where it ends. This was just a dour, mostly by the numbers story that had no reason to be two parts. It feels like every single other X-Men future story, where mutants are killed or imprisoned in a post-apocalyptic society, except they usually start where this one stops. I can't think of a single reason to recommend this, especially since even the title is a lie, giving Magneto never conquers the USA, because that would have been interesting. What if Daredevil had saved Nuke? Right at the end of the Born Again arc, Daredevil takes the dying super soldier Nuke to a hospital. He gets him there in time only to be ambushed by Kingpin goons dressed as police, who he barely escapes, taking Nuke with them. Knowing Nuke can be traced back to him, Kingpin recruits Bullseye to retrieve Nuke, who Matt has taken back to Hell's Kitchen. Bullseye kidnaps Karen and Matt looks for her, finding and fighting Bullseye, who tells him to bring Nuke to the Kingpin if he wants to see Karen again. Matt considers it, but can't bring himself to do it, abandoning him and facing Kingpin himself, only for Nuke to follow him and kill Bullseye. He knocks out Matt and tries to kill Kingpin, only to be blasted out the window and fall to his death, and it's suggested Kingpin is brought up on murder charges and put away for good. This is a short and simple story that mostly feels like an addendum to the Born Again story, with everything ending the same way except for Bullseye. But it's worth reading for Ben Ulrich's narration, which technically bookends the story this time, though we see the Watcher in the background, possibly influencing the story he's writing. But why did he set it on fire? Apparently Marvel Comics exists in this universe, and they're always looking for ideas. What if Silver Surfer possessed the Infinity Gauntlet? In that crucial moment during the saga, Silver actually does snatch the gauntlet from Thanos, but decides nobody else is worthy of its power and puts it on himself, becoming all-powerful. He undoes everything Thanos caused and sends the mortal heroes back home before declaring to the other cosmic beings that he's in charge of the universe and will allow them to continue existing testing if they obey him. Galactus refuses and is disintegrated. As Thanos and Atom watch, Silver uses his power to eliminate disease, famine, war, greed, poverty, and the fear of death. He tries to reform Mephisto, but he refuses and Silver destroys him, shocking himself with how easy it was and excusing Thanos and Atom to Strange's mansion while he collects himself. When they're called back, Silver announces his intention to reshape the universe into a perfect order in his image. Strange arrives with Silver's love Shala Bal to hopefully talk him out of it. Silver makes her his equal to rule the universe with him, but Shala Bal believes it's too much power to bear, and when he refuses to give it up, a great battle begins. Silver nearly kills her, but she tells him she will always love him, knocking him out of his power-mad stupor. Thus they destroy themselves to also destroy the gauntlet, but it ends showing they've turned themselves mortal and created a planet where they will live out their lives. This is another really simple story that barely feels comic length, but an interesting way to end the original Infinity Gauntlet saga. At least Silver gets a good ending, the guy life hates more than Daredevil. What if the Hulk had killed Wolverine? During the Fall of Mutants storyline, Hulk recovers much faster in his battle with Wolverine and absolutely wails on Logan, managing to snap his adamantium spine and seemingly killing him. Without Logan intervening, the adversary takes control of Starlight Citadel, transforming Dallas, Texas into his headquarters and killing many of the X-Men. A confused Hulk goes back to Dallas to find his friends, only to be ambushed by a dinosaur. He easily defeats it, and the nearby time-displaced inhabitants worship him. Meanwhile, the rest of the X-Men try to get their bearings on the other side of the transformed city when Spiral returns with news of the Hulk's location. A furious Rogue goes to fight him, and getting no support from his new followers, Hulk takes her on himself. Rogue tries to sap his powers, but Hulk throws her off and nearly kills her, the rest of the X-Men showing up just in time to stop him. Blinded by rage, he starts killing heroes, only for Rick to arrive and tell him to stop. Just then, Logan appears, explaining his healing factor saved him and showing Rick was actually Mystique. But Logan is actually the adversary, who kills most of the remaining heroes, only for Hulk to strike him a blow that weakens him enough for Storm and Forge to escape the Citadel. Forge sacrifices himself to banish adversary from Earth, freeing Dallas from his control, and it ends with Hulk changing back into Bruce and being arrested for his crimes. I haven't read the story arc, but it's a very exciting and engaging story that feels like it would naturally fit in an X-Men event. Though technically, would Logan have died from his spine being snapped, or would his healing factor keep him conscious and forever wishing for death? What if the Punisher became Captain America? Steve is permanently paralyzed in a battle with Red Skull, and the search for a replacement begins. Their first choice is Frank Castle, who at this time is still a US soldier, but he declines. Much later, after multiple unsuccessful recruits and Frank's family dying, Frank takes the mantle of Captain America. His methods are much more violent, and when he nearly kills Hammerhead, the Avengers demand Fury does something, which he refuses since his superiors find nothing wrong with him. Unknown to the team, Frank moonlights as the Punisher, freely killing the crime he can't as Captain America, but his moonlighting is noticed by the government, and fearing egg on their face, they scramble for another replacement. Falcon confronts him and he gives up on the Captain America name entirely, going after a pair of mob bosses as the Punisher, but he's suddenly stopped by Captain America, who's actually Steve after major cybernetic surgery. He tells Frank that he can do more as a symbol of good than by waging his own personal vendetta. Frank at first ignores him, but starts doubting himself, finally giving in and fully embracing the Captain America persona, while Steve fights his own battles as the Captain. This one starts out fine, and I like the montage of failed captains, but the second half feels really rushed and like it's missing a few pages. We don't get closure on what the government were gonna do about Frank, and why Steve couldn't just continue as Captain America with his new limbs. I guess it's passable, but with the multi-part stories we've been getting, why couldn't this have been one? What if Doom became Sorcerer Supreme? During his initial travels to learn the arcane arts, Doom comes across the Ancient One's temple. While wary of Doom's search for power, he sees potential and agrees to accept Doom as his disciple, promising to take him to the Netherworld once he's ready. Doom proves to be a very fast learner, leading Mordo to try and kill him, but Doom plants a bomb in his head in case he ever threatens him again. Strange finally arrives, and the Ancient One tells Doom to fix his problem and his training will be complete, but Doom just replaces Strange's hands with superior robotic ones, and Strange leaves satisfied. The Ancient One thinks Doom is reckless and decides to fulfill his bargain and be done with him, finding Doom has already prepared armor to protect himself for the trip, complete with the cape and Eye of Agamotto. They go to the Netherworld and find Doom's mother, but while Doom is distracted, Mephisto attacks the Ancient One, killing him and destroying his power over Dormammu. But the Ancient One's soul escapes Mephisto's realm and takes Doom's mother with him, Doom also escaping back to the temple. Dormammu's power starts to tear apart Earth, thus Doom enlists the Fantastic Four to travel back in time and recover Merlin's talisman from Blackbeard's treasure, which they do, but this time Ben stays behind to actually live as Blackbeard. They return to their building to find all available superheroes keeping demonic forces at bay. Reed gets the gem to Doom, who uses it to banish Dormammu and his forces forever. The strain is too much for Doom, but before he dies, his robots kidnap Strange and erase his mind, downloading Doom's mind into him to ensure his immortality. This was a great showcase for Doom, and that he's only a hero when he doesn't get in the way of his ego. We have an anthology today. In the first, Spider-Man damages the time travel circuits of Arno Stark from then future 2020, preventing his return. 6 years later, Arno is a depressed alcoholic with a dead-end job. It's later announced that Tony Stark has been murdered and his evil cousin Morgan Stark is taking over. Arno turns out to be helping Morgan and tries to pin the murder on Rhodes, but he confronts him, so Arno uses his suit to kill Rhodes. Morgan celebrates, only for Tony to barge in, revealing he's not dead and using Morgan to find Arno. A sky battle occurs and Tony breaks Arno's already fragile suit, causing him to fall to his death, Tony never learning who he was. And we see a young Arno drawing his future armor. Next, during the time Bruce and Rick were both Hulks, Bruce is cured instead of Rick. With Leader's help, they capture Rick, and Leader forces Bruce to transfer Rick's power into him. In an attempt to thwart the Leader, Bruce redirects the process into himself instead, curing Rick and seemingly depowering and paralyzing Leader. Unfortunately, Leader planned for that and switched minds during the process, trapping Bruce in his old body and now controlling an amalgamation of the Hulk and Leader, spelling doom for the world. Finally, instead of Calypso cursing the lizard with immortality, Spider-Man eventually kills the lizard. Kurt's wife Martha takes it well, but not his son Billy. Later, Martha calls Peter to the hospital, telling him that Billy wasn't himself after the news and that he just cut off his own arm, and it ends showing Calypso about to turn him into a new lizard, so these stories happened. What if Death's Head had lived? Death's Head teleports back to his time right before Minion can decapitate him. Instead, Minion kills Reed and assimilates his mind before also returning to the year 2020. Later, the mind of Baron Strucker possesses Minion, becoming the villain Charnel, and he takes revenge on Olivine. Dr. Necker hires Death's Head to take down Charnel, and he agrees, first traveling back to 1992 and fetching multiple heroes for the battle. They put up a good fight, but Charnel kills each of them. Death's Head reveals the superheroes were just a distraction while he stockpiled enough weapons and armor to level the playing field, but even then he's no match for Charnel. Death's Head taunts Charnel that he hasn't used any of the personalities he's so proud of, thus he chooses one and seemingly destroys Death's Head, who survives and decapitates Charnel, finally killing him. Death's Head reveals that Charnel called upon Reed's personality, who worked just enough against his inner workings to give Death's Head an opening. And thus as Death's Head's anti-heroics continue, not caring one bit about the heroes he led to their deaths. Well, this is the most 90s story we've seen so far. Guns, muscles, metal, edginess, lack of morality, all the stuff comics were convinced people wanted back then. But at least this story was cheesy fun, making a revisit worth it, unlike Youngblood. What if the Avengers lost Galactic Storm? Captain America stops Deathbird right before she assassinates the Kree leaders Ael'dan and Dar-Ben, who then kill her. Knowing it must have helped her, they also destroy the Supreme Intelligence before Ael'dan stabs Dar-Ben in the back and takes complete control of the Empire. Using the Omni-Wave, he destroys all life on Earth and the Shi'ar throne world in his first steps toward universal racial cleansing. Later, Tony and Clint, still reeling from the news, go to save Steve, Tony distracting Ronan while Clint changes costumes with Steve so Steve can sneak out and lead them to victory. Tony is forced to engage his armored self-destruct and takes Ronan with him. Steve is brought into the Kree underground resistance, where they also rescue Dane, Crystal, Cersei, and Hercules, the latter two sacrificing themselves so the resistance can escape. They're ambushed by Kree ships, but saved just in time by Quasar, who takes them to what remains of the Shi'ar fleet, now populated by all heroes who weren't present on Earth or Throne World, thus their struggle against the Kree continues. Continued in the next issue. Several years later, the Kree Empire continues to grow, destroying countless worlds and species while neglecting its own people. The heroes infiltrate a data center, but have to fight their way out, leaving some of the team behind. They nearly lose the stolen data, but Vision sacrifices his mind to store it, and using the info, the heroes and every rebel forces join their cause all converge on the Kree command world. While most hold off the main forces, a small group led by Steve infiltrate the command center, but are ambushed by the Kree Star Force. Steve manages to slip away and enter a room where he reactivates the Supreme Intelligence, who immediately takes control of all systems and cripples the Kree's conquest across the universe, killing Ael'dan and even itself with the strain. And the story ends with them saving their fallen comrade Simon by downloading him into Vision before readying themselves to fix the universe. This was a freaking epic story with hope, despair, life, death, action, suspense, all the good stuff. Even if the ending feels rushed, with the war's conclusion summarized on one page and the tyrants dying off panel. Still one of the best stories of the series, if only it was part of the video game. What if the Punisher became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? At some point, Frank is captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. and becomes part of the Force, assigned a S.H.I.E.L.D. team to command. Frank has the time of his life, destroying the big names instead of small-time hoods, even killing Yellow Claw, but he's soon called out for his overly destructive behavior and realizes he hates taking orders. Later, he nearly kills a human trafficking ring and torches their warehouse, once again disobeying orders and is stripped of command, instead being assigned to Dugan's team. They track down a Hydra base where all but Frank are gunned down, Frank managing to blow it up before officially going AWOL. He has Microchip download all S.H.I.E.L.D. intel on Hydra, then steals a S.H.I.E.L.D. jet and flies to Hydra's main base, single-handedly taking on the entire force. And it ends with Frank being shot down, but not before dropping a bomb into their nuclear reactor and blowing up Hydra. This is fun, but it didn't need to be a what-if. Besides Frank and Dugan dying, this could have very easily been rewritten as a regular issue of The Punisher, where no duh Frank doesn't get along with S.H.I.E.L.D. It's not awful, just not needed, but it is the very first issue to not even reference the Watcher. What if the Punisher had killed Spider-Man? During his first appearance when he's hired by the Jackal to kill Spider-Man, instead of just shooting at him, Frank dedicates his life to studying Spider-Man to know how to hunt him. Thanks to slander from the Daily Bugle, Frank is completely convinced Peter is a menace, also destroying every trace of his past life so he can focus on being the Punisher full-time. He camps out across from the Bugle and waits for Peter, finally getting his chance and firing multiple shots, all of which Peter dodges. He gets away and, with Jackal's help, looks for a way to nullify his spider sense. He tricks Peter into thinking he's sensing Doc Ock's presence when it's actually a dummy stuffed with explosives that Frank detonates, killing Peter instantly. But when Frank learns that Peter was no threat and the Jackal used him, he barges in on the Jackal, only to find him gone and evidence planted linking Frank to the murder. And the police are already on the scene, whom he narrowly escapes. He's endlessly hunted by the other heroes, never gaining their trust, and at one point is even invited to join Peter's rogues gallery, who he kills instead. Spider-Man is seen as a martyr and glorified by the news, and it's during one broadcast where Frank hears a familiar voice. He tracks it down and it's revealed to be Miles, the civilian identity of Jackal. He purposely calls the cops to his meeting, and when they warn him they'll shoot if he does, he pulls the trigger. This is pretty good, better than the last Punisher story with some absolutely incredible artwork. Though having all of Spider-Man's villains at one party felt goofy even by comic standards. What if Wolverine led Alpha Flight? After his escape from Alpha Flight and their battle with the X-Men, Logan reluctantly agrees to return with Alpha Flight. The X-Men decide to rescue him, and Canada takes this as a threat, intercepting and destroying their jet, killing everyone aboard. Logan is furious, but Hudson convinces him he's an integral part of the team, and Logan agrees to stay with them. Soon after, the team go in to rescue hostages from the negative zone, finding a nihilist and stealing his cosmic control rod, which Logan uses to barter for the hostages, finding that actually being part of a team is forcing him to think more clearly. Later, what remains of the X-Men send out a desperate plea to rescue them from the Hellfire Club, finally forcing Hudson to send the team to help them despite believing they're dangerous outlaws. They infiltrate the Hellfire Club and take out most of the members, but are knocked out and awakened to find the Black King and Queen have awakened to the Dark Phoenix and Jean Grey. Jean reveals Northstar ignored the original X-Men message that resulted in their jet being destroyed, so Logan wouldn't be tempted to go back to them. Logan leaps at Northstar, ready to gut him, but instead kills Jean. And it ends with Logan deciding to stay with Alpha Flight, since he likes the feeling of taking responsibility. This is fun! fun. I don't know much about Alpha Flight, but this is a believable path for Logan to take. Shame about the X-Men, but at least the Dark Phoenix saga never happens. The X-Men wedding album chronicles multiple possible hookups for Jean Grey. First, Scott and Jean marry much earlier than they originally did, also deciding to leave the X-Men and live a normal life, which encourages a good chunk of the team to also graduate Xavier's school and live their own lives. Scott and Jean advocate for mutant rights and eventually have a kid, while Xavier and his skeletal team try to continue their fight. But when they go to Krakatoa, Xavier is with them, thus no call for help is given and it extinguishes the X-Men. The Avengers kill it when it invades Japan, finding the bodies of the X-Men, and at the funeral, Scott and Jean wonder what would have happened if they stayed. Next, instead of Scott, Jean originally fell for Angel. Without love, Scott focuses all his attention on leading the X-Men, becoming more unstable when Xavier loses his powers during a battle with Magneto. After another Magneto encounter, Xavier reveals he never lost his powers and it was a test for Scott, who gets even angrier. Thus, Xavier gives command of the team to Beast and Scott furiously quits. Practically insane and seeking revenge, he's recruited into Magneto's team, and that's where his story ends. Finally, Phoenix hooks up with Logan, embracing her wild side and becoming much more ruthless in her battles. Even when she's freed after becoming Black Queen, she's too far gone, fully transforming into the Phoenix and destroying all of her path. Logan distracts her long enough for Xavier to turn her back into Jean, but during the fight with the Shi'ar, her emotional bond with Logan isn't strong enough to prevent her from turning back into Phoenix and destroying the universe. These are fine, and like the first one most, though Phoenix destroying the universe has become boring to me. What if Spider-Man's parents destroyed his family? Aunt May reveals her suspicions for Peter's supposed parents, thus the robot imposters attack Peter, Aunt May, and Mary Jane, killing the latter two. Enraged, Peter fights back, convincing himself this is all an illusion and his real family is being kept in custody. The imposters escape and run into a police station, screaming that Peter is Spider-Man and pinning the murders on him, and Peter currently going berserk doesn't help his case. Jonah prints the story and Peter goes after him, demanding to know where his fake parents are, Jonah revealing they're under Avengers protection. Peter doesn't immediately go there, instead tracking down Vulture and Chameleon and beating answers out of them, accidentally killing Chameleon. While the Avengers look for Peter, he lurks outside their headquarters, slowly losing his mind before noticing the imposters escaping the compound to report back to Osborn. He chases them down, slowly draining their energy until they all finally fall to the ground. But when Peter wakes up, he sees a large crowd of police and heroes waiting for him, and that the imposters took the form of his parents before dying, and Peter, giving up on life, surrenders without a fight. Wow, this was dour, but at least gave us a good story with its dark tone. Why do the characters look like they're from the Back to the Future animated series in some panels? What if Wolverine battled Weapon X? Logan is never kidnapped for the Weapon X project. Instead, a soldier named Guidus Jarndyce is chosen, but the process destroys his mind and renders him virtually uncontrollable. He's put in Alpha Flight's control but escapes, killing everyone in his way, including a good friend of Logan's, who goes hunting for the minds behind the project, barging into Department H and finding enough evidence to link the Canadian government with Weapon X. Alpha Flight pursues Weapon X, but they're all slaughtered trying to subdue him. But then Logan shows up to take him on, first with guns, then with knives, then finally just ripping off the armor and decapitating him. Logan escapes being taken into captivity and is thought dead, but he survives and leaks the evidence to the press, shutting down the Weapon X program and finally feeling good about himself. It's Wolverine fighting fake Wolverine! What's not awesome about that? What if War Machine had not destroyed the living laser? At the last minute, Rhodes decides not to vaporize Arthur and lets him work at Stark Enterprises. Despite trying to make himself useful, Arthur feels ostracized by his coworkers, finally confronting Rhodes about it, who tells him to be patient. Arthur intercepts an urgent message to Rhodes and, disguising himself as Rhodes, goes down to the medical bay, where it's revealed the thought dead Tony is actually comatose. The shock causes Arthur to lose his disguise, sounding the alarms and calling Rhodes into the room. Here, the comic lets us choose which ending we prefer. In the first, Arthur attacks Stark, causing Rhodes to attack Arthur. Enraged at being lied to, Arthur blinds Rhodes but can't bring himself to finish him. Using his suit's technology, Rhodes regains his sight and chases after Arthur, finding him in the communications room where he realizes he has no chance of redemption and vaporizes himself. Next, Tony is woken from his coma, saying that his mind accessed the company records and found Arthur a star employee, letting him stay on. But Rhodes, sick of being played, quits and leaves, allowing Tony's enemies to launch an assault on his company. Thanks to his shape-shifting powers, Arthur becomes Iron Man and defends Stark as his official bodyguard. Finally, Tony doesn't trust Arthur, but Rhodes, angry he's been lied to, keeps him around despite Tony. He recruits Arthur to help him fight crime, but Rhodes' armor is shown to have been enforced against Arthur's powers, showing he still doesn't trust him. Rhodes catches Arthur seemingly attacking Tony and nearly kills him, only for Tony to reveal he was saving him from the controller. Later, Stark's space station is invaded by the Technovore, which Arthur volunteers to fight, easily defeating it. But knowing he'll never feel trusted on Earth, he chooses to stay and help Tony from up there. Personally, I choose ending C. What if Iron Man sold out? Instead of keeping the Iron Man technology for himself, Tony makes his designs public, greatly strengthening nearly every single sector and bringing about wonders thought impossible. Stark Enterprises still kept their secrets closely guarded, but government interference and corporate espionage leaked them to other companies, most using them for war. A troubled Tony retreated from public, leaving Rhodes in charge, who also doesn't know where he is. Most heroes retire in favor of the Iron Guard, but as technology improves, heroes and villains get more dangerous. Magneto hijacks a United Nations meeting, demanding technology is dialed back and proving more than a match for the Iron Guard. The news reaches Tony, who unveils his most powerful armor to date, Rhodes soon also discovering his plans and going after him. Meanwhile, a retired Peter and Strange, also seeing the danger, recruit as many heroes as will listen, and with the X-Men, defend against Magneto's mutant hordes for as long as they can. Tony intends to use his armor's energy to send an incredibly powerful magnetic pulse across the world that will destroy all technology, but Rhodes convinces him it will do more harm than good. Instead, Tony neutralizes Magneto and ends the fighting, but still demands war technology be dialed back or he'll launch his field. Thus, peacekeeping is taken from the machines and given back to the heroes. Hot damn, I love this world! Why did the story have to only be one issue? This is easily one of the best! What if Archangel fell from grace? After thinking he killed Iceman, Warren doesn't attack Apocalypse and just flies off, instead becoming a lone anti-hero. Scott beeps himself up over losing Warren and not being able to save Bobby, only for Jean Grey to tell him to snap out of it and go find Warren. Warren's reign of terror continues, killing a bloodthirsty gang of Morlocks and anyone else associated with crime. Finally, Scott, Beast, and Jean stop him before he kills a street street gang, only for Warren to paralyze Scott and nearly kill Beast, making it clear he'll take down anyone in his way. Later, Warren learns that his girlfriend Candy has been kidnapped by Hodge and his anti-mutant organization, the Right, and after some ruthless clue searching, finally tracks their base down to find it swarming with demons. He fights off the hordes and kills Hodge, but is too late to save Candy. He finds Hodge was consorting with Nastir, who offers him a place in his legions when Inferno begins. But Warren, realizing how far he's fallen, refuses, dragging them both into an unfinished portal that vaporizes them. Thus Inferno has been averted, and Warren is seen as a hero again. Sorry, this one's awful. The story is overly basic and barely anything happens, but the clincher is that the artwork is so shadowy and badly colored, I can barely tell what's going on from panel to panel. Skip this one and go read Revelations instead. But what if Rogue possessed the power of Thor? During her debut appearance, a then villainous Rogue decides to completely drain Thor of his powers. With her now incredible strength, she kills or disables all the heroes attacking her, even revealing she can wield Mjolnir. Hearing of Thor's death, an outraged Odin sends Thor's friends to retrieve his powers, which Loki overhears. Rogue busts her friends out of prison, but when Blob gets too friendly, she ignorantly kills them all. As she grieves, Loki recruits her, promising to show her her destiny. Thor's memories torment her, and she begins to wonder if she's a hero or villain, but it's put on hold as she and Loki storm Asgard, making short work of the guards. Thor's friends return with many heroes and a war begins, with Loki and Rogue escaping. They teleport to the throne room, and Loki orders Rogue to kill Odin. But thanks to Thor's memories and Odin's yielding, Rogue sees what she's doing is evil, having a mental breakdown where Thor talks to her in her mind, telling her to be the hero he was. Rogue defeats Loki and his forces and truly accepts her role as Thor. This is pretty good with some great artwork, but I'm pretty sure Thor has enough power to vaporize Rogue if she tried this. Better use of her than the original X-Men movies, though. What if Captain America were revived today? Yes, again, Namor is knocked out by the Avengers, thus never finds Steve. Much later, Steve is found and thawed out by an expedition led by a mysterious figure. When he regains consciousness, Steve is told that the world has been conquered by a secret Nazi group known as the Sleepers, who have killed most other heroes and appointed Red Skull as supreme leader. And the voice is revealed to be Doom, claiming to be the last ruler still fighting against the Red Skull and convincing Steve to join his cause. Doom introduces them to a team of former supervillains, and Steve proves himself their leader. They attack a station that will allow them to invade further inland, but Steve grows wary of his team's ruthlessness. Once they find the gadget they're looking for, they tell Steve that Doom actually rules half the world, and this is his push to rule the other half. And his purpose served, they try to kill Steve, only for a team of heroes calling themselves the Ex-Patriots to barge in. The conclusion next issue. In the second part, the heroes battle the villains, destroying the gadget and eventually knocking them out. Steve convinces them he's actually Captain America and joins them, Red Skull also learning of Steve's revival. They return to their secret base, where Fury is reintroduced as Steve, revealing they're about to launch a suicide run and destroy Red Skull for good. The assault begins, the heroes initially having the upper hand, but Red Skull sends a brainwashed Hulk to destroy them. After a long battle, Iron Man frees the Hulk and they take down the enemy forces. Steve barges in on Red Skull, only to find he's been suffocated by Peter's webbing, who has taken a bullet and dies soon after. Thus the war is over and the heroes are victorious. Yeah, I don't know about this one. The action and backstory are decent, but take up a lot of space that could have been better used to flesh out the world. It suggested even the heroes have lost hope and just want revenge, so it could be interesting to see Steve knock some sense back into them, or even realize there are no more heroes and every side is evil. Also, they forgot about Doom. I just feel this arc needed another part, and that the original series had the superior take. What if Strife killed the X-Men? During Executioner's song, Apocalypse's cure doesn't work and Xavier dies, his psychic scream also distracting Strife, who inadvertently kills Scott and Jean Grey. Apocalypse tries to appoint himself the new leader of the X-Men, but they refuse and he slaughters them all. Meanwhile, Strife kills Logan and Bishop and takes Cable prisoner, screaming about Cable's inferiority to him. Cable tells him they need to work together to take down Apocalypse, but is ignored. Meanwhile, the X-Factor notices the X-Men dead and rename themselves the X-Men, taking the Blackbird to the moon to stop Strife and Apocalypse. They break through to their outpost and fight their way to Strife's time vortex machine, but Apocalypse disables or destroys them all. Apocalypse gives Strife one last chance to join him while also preparing to kill Cable, but Strife, shaken by how many had to die, fights back, forcing him into the time vortex machine and vaporizing them both. Cable and the remaining heroes barely escaping. Cable becomes the leader of the new team of X-Men, keeping Xavier's ideals alive. This is fine, just a lot of fighting, though I like Strife finally accepting Cable as his brother. Though if they killed everyone responsible for their future, shouldn't they disappear? What if Silver Surfer had not betrayed Galactus? When Reed threatens Galactus with the ultimate nullifier, Silver Surfer grabs it back and returns it to Galactus, who uses it to vaporize the Watcher. Knowing they're overpowered, the Fantastic Four rescue Alicia before retreating into an armored bunker, where they're instantly locked in. The Avengers fight back, but are easily disabled, allowing Galactus to drain the world of life. Later, the Fantastic Four venture out into the lifeless world, completely barren of hope, when a spaceship lands in front of them, revealing Doom, who says he knows how to get revenge on Galactus. The team follow Galactus to another world, where Doom fights Silver while the Fantastic Four infiltrate Galactus' ship, finding themselves opposed by the ship's defenses. Doom and Silver destroy each other, while the Wasp is revealed to still be alive, guiding Reed back to the ultimate nullifier and putting it back in his hands. And here Insane Reed gets ready to use it on Galactus, but can't bring himself to do it, it, and Galactus destroys it. But since Reed shows mercy towards him, Galactus appoints them his new heralds and they guide him to unpopulated worlds to devour instead. Okay, this is fine until the ending, which feels like that defeated by the power of love cop-out crap, and once again forgets Galactus needs populated worlds to gain energy. And ignoring how Wasp is suddenly here and alive, how is she breathing in the vacuum of space? Read most of the comic, but stop at the last 5 pages and make your own ending. What if the Gamma Bomb spawned 1,000 Hulks? At the end of World War II, Nazi spies destroyed research on the atomic bomb, thus forcing the government to drop gamma bombs to end the war. Radiation mutated most of Japan into either Hulk-like creatures or beings of a supreme intellect known as Oni, who gained control of the Hulks and used them to attack the world, killing the existing heroes and conquering America. 40 years later, the Hulks are under control of this reality's the leader, killing or imprisoning all emerging heroic threats, but the gamma radiation is slowly killing them all. They recruit Bruce Banner to find the cure, but one of them kills Betty due to her relation to General Ross, and an outraged Bruce sabotages his cure to speed up the process. But right before it's activated, he sees Fury also trying to sabotage Oni technology and pushes him out of the way of the blast, which destroys most of the important Oni leaders and turns him into the Hulk, while retaining his original personality. Thus, he leads the revolution against the rest of the Oni, accompanied by other superheroes, with Ben Ulrich, war correspondent, there to write the news. This is a good beginning, but that's it. There are so many oversized panels and practically no room for story, and I feel like we've seen this plot 100 times in this series alone. And why did this blast not give Bruce the Hulk's personality? What if Spider-Man became a murderer? In a blind fit of rage, Peter beats the man who killed Uncle Ben to death, then leaves, horrified at what he did. But he's seen, and Spider-Man is branded a murderer. A week later, Peter is still guilt-ridden, but knows he has to help Aunt May. Peter tries stopping a robbery, but second-guesses his own strength and gives him time to get away. At school, Peter finally has enough of Flash Thompson's torment and throws him against the wall, knocking him out before running out of the building in horror. Jonah continues his endless crusade against Spider-Man, bolstered by news of the murder, while Peter starts to ask Aunt May what to do, but backs out. Later, Sandman holds Peter's school hostage, forcing Peter to become Spider-Man, but the news crews hound him while he tries to fight, and he has to retreat, Flash getting credit for the save. Later, Peter takes a job with Kirk Connors, trying to find a cure for his spider powers when Kurt transforms into the Lizard. In the ensuing battle, Peter debates if he should just let Lizard kill him, but then realizes he was given these powers for a reason and he has a legacy to live up to, thus resumes fighting, learning how to control his strength. He cures Kurt, and through his encouragement, finally turns himself in, revealing to the world he's Spider-Man and serving 2 years in prison. But once released, he continues his crime-fighting guilt-free. Wow, this one was good, really showing a new angle of with great power comes great responsibility, though do I want to know how Aunt May supported herself while Peter was in prison? What if Kingpin owned Daredevil? Kingpin comes across the body of Matt's father shortly after he's murdered. He hears about Matt's unusual abilities and sends an invite for Matt to meet him at the docks. There, he plants a Viper to attack Matt, but Matt counters it, impressing Kingpin, who asks for Matt to join his forces as a potential lawyer. He agrees, and everyone behind Matt's father's death is suddenly killed off. Stick comes by demanding to know what happened, and Matt no longer wants anything to do with him. Years later, Matt continues honing his skills while studying to be a lawyer. Without Matt, Foggy never gains the confidence to become a lawyer, but Elektra does, while still collecting ninja gear. Karen Page leads a successful TV series, and Ulrich becomes Matt's biggest decrier. Meanwhile, Matt continues to successfully defend Kingpin's actions in court, but he runs out of loopholes. Kingpin decides to get out of the crime business, but is ambushed and shot by his son Richard, who wants his position. Matt counters all their attacks and kills the group, and after the chaos that follows Kingpin's death, it suggested Matt becomes the new Kingpin. This one's not bad, especially with some tremendously good artwork and narration, but what possessed Kingpin to make Matt a lawyer and not a fighter, especially since the test he set was for his abilities? Wouldn't it make more sense to encourage him to do both? Still, it made me feel bad for Kingpin, and that's no easy feat. What if Mr. Sinister formed the X-Men? Mr. Sinister does not kill the couple who are going to adopt Scott, but they back out at the last minute, leaving Scott at the orphanage to further be influenced by Sinister. With him under his control, he also recruits Havoc, Sauron, Sabretooth, and Malice possessing Jean Grey's clone Madeline to create his own X-Factor team, focusing on creating the perfect evolutionary species. The team attack Magneto at his first appearance and try to kill him, but he escapes, vowing vengeance. Sinister chastises the team for showing weakness, then sends them on another assignment, also threatening Sabretooth not to challenge the mental conditioning that allows him to control Scott. They track the target to Cairo, who turns out to be Storm, only to run into the real original X-Men team with Banshee instead of Cyclops. They fight, with some of X-Factor questioning why the X-Men are showing restraint and if Sinister was wrong about other mutants. Suddenly, Magneto and his group invade Sinister's lair, Sinister calling the team back, but also commanding Sabretooth to kill the real Jean Grey. But something digs in the back of Scott's mind and he can't allow it, blasting Sabretooth back. Jean tries to convince Scott to join her, but Magneto's team severely hurts Sinister, Scott feeling it through his mental link. He thinks Jean tricked him and rushes back to find Magneto and his team gone and Sinister seemingly dying. Sinister tells Scott and Havoc to join the X-Men and destroy them from within, which they do, Xavier none the wiser as he considers them integral members of the team. This is interesting and a very probable path for Scott, but false advertising as Sinister forms X-Factor, not X-Men. What if Blink of Generation X had not died? At the conclusion to the Phalanx Covenant, Blink is pulled free of her Blink Wave, but finds herself in a parallel dimension where she can see her former universe through mysterious time bubbles. Banshee nearly drowns, but Blink finds she can manipulate the other universe, saving Sean before going off to fix multiple other events, with Sean seemingly the only mortal aware of the changes. Blink tries to fix the event that apparently killed the others with her, but can't, as it would lead to a paradox, as she learns from the In-Betweener, the master of the realm she's caught in. He tries to kill her to prevent further damage to the time stream, but she reflexively appears to kill him. Life continues to change for the better for the X-Men and the entire world, further confusing Sean, who shares his experiences with Moira, who's horrified by the world he knows. Cerebro suddenly detects Blink and her alterations to the time stream, showing she's absorbed the In-Betweener's power. She attempts to fix the paradox moment, only to be seized by a mysterious force that also causes time rifts to tear open the universe and cause all of time and reality to converge. With no other option, Sean uses Cerebro hero to travel to Blink's dimension to stop her, finding her being consumed by chaos. He tells Blink she has to release her control over the universe, which she does, restoring time back to its original path and causing Sean to lose his awareness. The in-betweener rematerializes and decides to take Blink's on as an apprentice to learn how to properly use her powers. This was mental, but very entertaining, and a great change-up from the constant apocalyptic future stories we've been getting. What if Peter Parker had to destroy Spider-Man? Flash barges in on the science convention to confront Peter, thus the spider bites him instead. Peter stops him from killing the driver who nearly ran them down, telling Flash they can refine his powers so he can be a hero, but we see Flash wants to take a different path. He tricks Peter into designing a costume and gadgets for his persona, which also causes the burglar to skip Peter's house and instead kill Mary Jane. Peter delivers the gear to Flash, who immediately uses it to steal the jewels Vulture was about to steal, calling himself the Spider. Peter threatens to turn him in, only for Flash to pin him to the underside of a roof, intending for him to fall to his death when the web dissolves. Peter escapes and contemplates what to do back at home, finally building his own super suit, which he uses to stop Flash from killing Jonah. He easily counters each of Flash's powers, eventually overloading his spider sense and knocking him out. Jonah praises Peter, and Peter goes home to thank his aunt and uncle for giving him the pep talk he needed to go after Flash. Just then, the Fantastic Four show up to invite them to the Baxter Building, where they reveal they've drained Flash of his spider powers, destroying them forever. Peter starts to protest, but Reed says he's already proven himself a hero, and Peter returns home to find himself celebrated as such, going on to have a superhero career of his own under the name Spider-Man. Again, really good Spider-Man story, showing that Peter doesn't need powers to be awesome, and a good send-off for the Watcher, who makes his final narrator appearance here. What if Legion had killed Magneto? Instead of going to Cairo, Legion ambushes Eric during World War II, killing him before he could become Magneto and threaten the X-Men. However, this creates a paradox that results in Legion's mother dying before he's born, wiping him from existence. In the world without Magneto, mutants are seen as entertainers and the X-Men are celebrities under Forge's leadership, with Xavier as a public relations manager. The Hellfire Club have turned their interest to the world of science and finance and are busy closing business deals when a band of rogue mutants barge in, killing everyone. Xavier visits some married Scott and Jean and their family, attempting to recruit them for a mission, but they refuse. Later, the X-Men are performing in Washington, D.C., only to be ambushed and killed by the same band of rogue mutants. Xavier disables most of them to discover they're led by Apocalypse, who wants to purge the Earth. Scott and Jean relent and join the fight, and Xavier, with the last of his power and Jean's help, kills Apocalypse. The other mutants swear to continue Apocalypse's legacy, thus Jean vaporizes them as Phoenix, and the event results in a new wave of fear for mutants, as even other superheroes claim they're dangerous. Thus Scott and Jean reopen Xavier's school to retrain mutants for the world ahead, while Apocalypse's remaining forces, including former heroes, indicate a battle for the future. I guess this one's okay, but I could have used more insight into how the mutants were integrated into this universe. Also, if Legion never existed, how did he kill Magneto? What if the new Fantastic Four had remained a team? The original Fantastic Four are killed in their battle with the Mole People, thus a new Fantastic Four comprised of Hulk, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and the Denny Ketch Ghost Rider are united for good. Also moving into the Baxter Building, where they rent out unused floors for extra cash. They prove to be an unstoppable force, including absolutely defeating Peter's Rogues Gallery. Mary Jane also stays on as their business manager, but one night finds Reed's robot Herbie destroyed. Soon, the heroes are ambushed in their own building by Lady Deathstrike and Abomination. Danny runs to change into Ghost Rider, only to be ambushed by Super Skrull and Devos. They fight valiantly, but all the heroes are seemingly killed in the battle, only for the villains to be disintegrated by Dr. Doom, who says he won't let anyone kill the team but him before leaving. The heroes recover and decide the role of Fantastic Four is too great for them, thus they disband and the Baxter Building is later demolished for a hotel. I think we needed another 1 or 2 issues for this story, because as is, it feels incredibly rushed. They could have gone into more detail about how the Fantastic Four's villains were more advanced thinkers than the other heroes' rogues galleries, and that's why the team didn't stand a chance. Instead, all we get is the heroes moving in, fighting a few battles, they get their asses kicked, and Doom is super OP and doesn't take advantage of the situation for some reason. I want to like this one, but I wish there was more to it. What if Storm had the power of Phoenix? Jean is knocked out during a space mission, thus Storm takes the controls and is taken over by the Phoenix Force instead. The ship crashes with only Logan surviving, while Storm controls the world as a goddess, taking control of the SHIELD helicarrier, converting or freezing most superpowered beings, and banning all ecological destruction, severely punishing all who even question her. When she catches a band of whalers, she not only kills them, but their families and anyone who even knew them, just to prove her superiority. Logan, Black Panther, and Storm's mentor, Ahadi, form a resistance group and search the wreckage of their crashed ship, finding the actual body of Storm preserved in the cocoon. They take her to Doom and Fury, who confirm she's the real Storm, thus the team, with the help of Kitty Pryde, sneak her aboard the helicarrier to deal with the Storm Phoenix. They encounter resistance, but knock them out with gas before shutting down the helicarrier's systems and evacuating as many people as possible, while Fury also frees the frozen heroes. Storm Phoenix tries killing the resistance, only for Kitty Pryde controlling the real Storm's body to confront her, winning everyone over to her side and distracting her just long enough for multiple warheads to detonate and drive Phoenix away, also blinding Ahadi. Storm is truly dead after Kitty leaves her, and the future remains uncertain for the now leaderless mutants. This is fine, but I'm getting sick of the X-Men turn evil or are destroyed thus the world becomes an apocalypse or dystopia plot. Why can't we have something with Black Panther for once? What if the Hulk had evolved into the Maestro? Doc Samson and Ringmaster try to hypnotize Bruce to bring his personalities together, only to awaken a more ruthless form of the Hulk, who kills them, Samson calling the Fantastic Four before he dies. The team try to stop him, but he escapes with Betty, Reed planning a tracker on him before he leaves. Hulk's fractured mind convinces him that all inferior life must be destroyed, killing multiple zoo animals before Ben shows up and is pummeled. Ben uses a gamma emitter meant to turn Hulk back into Bruce, but it only seems to make him stronger and more intelligent, inadvertently killing Reed. Hulk prepares to destroy the world, only for his personalities to suddenly splinter, reverting him back and forth between multiple versions of himself and threatening to unleash his Maestro persona. A more mutated Ben fights back, and in the brief instance, Bruce himself kills him. And it turns out this was an article in a magazine from an alternate universe. I guess this this is entertaining enough. Hulks out and kills people, then gets killed. That's it. Also false advertising, as we only see one glance at the maestro. What if the Age of Apocalypse had not ended? Bishop fails to prevent the Age of Apocalypse, thus, after a long reign, Magneto finally kills Apocalypse. With the Earth mostly wiped out, a team of humans and mutants start a new life on the moon. 2 years later, this version of the heroes learn about Galactus for the first time and that he's on his way to devour Earth. After much bickering, the humans and mutants decide to help each other, Gwen Stacy and Pietro even forming a relationship. The new team return to Earth to gather support, with many refusing to work with them, but they recruit a good number anyway. As they explore the abandoned base of the Watcher, Danielle and Dwayne find a version of Cerebro, so while the rest of the team work on repairing and outfitting an exploration ship that might turn the tides, Dwayne uses it, turning into a being of pure mental energy. Galactus arrives and begins setting up his planet-eating device, Magneto and his team moving to distract him. Meanwhile, a ship captained by Tony disables Silver Surfer and infiltrates Galactus' station, planting enough bombs to vaporize it and weaken Galactus. Dwayne unites the entire world under one thought of unity, then uses the energy to finally kill Galactus. Thus rebuilding can finally take place. I want to say this was a lot of fun, but it was hard to follow. The artwork is very ambitious, utilizing watercolors and even computer models, but it also makes everything dark and muddy and hard to make out what was happening. Still, from what I could read, it was a good alternate story for an alternate universe, though I never would have thought to ship Pietro and Gwen. What if Jonah adopted Spider-Man? Peter and Aunt May attend an event to see John Jameson's trip to Mars, where Chameleon takes control of the rocket. But something goes wrong and it crashes into the crowd. Peter survives, but finds everyone else dead, including Aunt May. Since Peter is still young and Jonah is now without a son, he adopts Peter, wasting no time in getting him into a prestigious school. Peter loves the new school and like a financial worry, but the accident has pushed Jonah even further over the edge and he blames Spider-Man for the disaster. Peter retires Spider-Man and Jonah makes him editor of his own publication, Peter even getting better benefits for his co-workers Betty and Foswell. Peter doubts he can resume being Spider-Man, but finding that Jonah also blames himself for the accident and is drinking himself into oblivion, he realizes it's his responsibility to clear Jonah's head, thus becoming Spider-Man and distracting him from the bottle for a while. However, it just makes Jonah more bitter, hiring Flash to be Peter's bodyguard while working on the Spider Slayer and Scorpion projects. Peter dedicates his publication to praising Spider-Man, which drives up sales of both papers, thus Jonah turns a blind eye. Peter sabotages the Spider Slayer, but Flash takes the Scorpion formula and goes berserk, and a furious Peter finally reveals his identity to Jonah before going after Flash. All of Spider-Man's villains attack him at once, but Jonah, growing in conscience, captains the Spider Slayer and they both save the day. Thus they form a super team and fight crime as father and son. Even among the many great stories we've seen, this is one that shines the brightest. I freaking love this one and I can't recommend it enough. Any story that makes Jonah sympathetic is doing something right. What if Daredevil was the disciple of Doctor Strange? Instead of going to the Ancient One, Strange goes to the Chase after his accident. There they train him in the disciplines of the martial arts and give him new purpose. Years later, he recruits Matt as his apprentice, but can't break Matt's desire for revenge, and Matt ends up joining the villainous Hand as Daredevil. Later still, Strange and Matt attend a party at a Greek embassy, both meeting Elektra, but Strange recruits Elektra first, making her his new apprentice. Daredevil and the Hand attempt multiple times to coax Strange and Elektra out, including torturing telepath Teresa Bellwether, but Strange always seems to defeat them and save Teresa. But even with all he's done, he struggles with the temptation to go back to the bottle and lives with regret for losing Matt, also fearing he's losing Elektra's loyalty. During an argument, the duo are ambushed by Matt and the Hand, Strange facing off against Matt solo, and while he puts up a good fight, Matt nearly kills him. Elektra offers to join the Hand if they let Strange go, but the Hand deems Elektra too dangerous and tries to kill her, only for Matt to turn on them and the trio defeat the Hand. Matt and Elektra reveal they've been seeing each other for quite some time, Matt revealing he never took an innocent life, biding his time before they could all trust each other. Matt and Elektra retire from the ninja business and run off together, while Strange learns he needs to improve his own life. Wow, this is awesome! A universe I never would have thought of, yet makes so much sense. Also, I really dig Matt's bad guy outfit. What if Shard had lived instead of Bishop? Fitzroy kills Bishop instead of Shard, thus Shard follows him into the past and, with the X-Men's help, kills him. The X-Men are horrified at what she did, so she loses all faith in them and leaves, vowing to start the Xavier Security Enforcers and prevent the future mutant extermination. She's outfitted with power amplifiers by Great and Creed, then goes after Magneto, but the X-Men stop her before she can kill him. Enraged, she turns her attention on the X-Men, and Magneto slips away in the confusion. Shard flies after him, but Storm stops her, and Shard starts to break down, revealing how hard she had it growing up in the future and hoping to prevent her brother's death, before Storm lets her fly away. Later, Magneto sends a distress call to the X-Men, only for Shard to interrupt and announce that she's about to kill him, to which the X-Men hurriedly speed off to the source of the signal. Magneto nearly kills Shard, but the X-Men's arrival distracts him long enough for Shard to deliver the killing blow. The X-Men turn on Shard, but Creed's soldiers disable most of them, and when Storm confronts Shard, Shard has no choice but to kill her. Shard teleports away, and we see that, thanks to her ruthlessness, the future she sought to prevent has been made worse, with the extermination of all mutants. This was dour and technically yet another dystopia plot, but at least it wasn't a major part of the story, and I wish this version of Shard remained, since she's an awesome villain. Also really dig the artwork. What if Magneto ruled all mutants? All mutants moved to the Avalon space station under Magneto's rule. However, their peace doesn't last long as mutants fraction into factions. Magneto gives them as much leeway as he can, but eventually threatens to take matters into his own hands if he must. Later, Skids and Rusty have a baby, who Beast determines may be the next step in mutant evolution. News reaches multiple mutant factions, who fear the child may be a threat to their superiority. They bring the news to Magneto, who tells them to figure out themselves, thus they ambush Skids, Rusty, and Beast, who are trying to flee the station. In the battle that follows, the baby is killed, and the three leave the station forever, the factions forming an alliance to ensure no special births ever threaten them again. Later it's revealed that Magneto altered the readouts to make it appear the baby was special, as to ensure the alliance and keep the station together. A disgusted Colossus leaves the station as well, telling Magneto that the theoretical situation he created might actually come to be, and it might be more than he can handle. It's yet another X-Men future dystopia story, and I am sick of these. Oh, this one at least feels too short to be boring. boring. Still, wow, if Magneto wasn't already one of the most hated characters in comics, this is a whole new low even for him. What if the Scarlet Spider killed Spider-Man? Peter is brainwashed to kill Mary Jane, forcing Riley to stop him. He's unable to work through the Jackal's brainwashing and is forced to kill Peter at the Edison power plant, which explodes from mechanical tampering. Riley is heavily injured but survives, and being a clone of Peter is mistaken for Peter. He wants to tell the truth, but Mary Jane's need for her husband forces Riley to take Peter's identity. Later, their baby is born, but with severe blood poisoning. Riley continues both sides of Peter's life, but is plagued by nightmares about how to cure his daughter May and the fear of being found out. Years later, he goes in to check on May, only to find her gone in the middle of the night. He goes after her to find her kidnapped by the thought-dead Green Goblin, who needs May's blood for a cure and reveals he knows Riley's secret. May nearly falls to her death, but Riley saves her at the last minute with his webbing trap. In the fight, Green Goblin is seemingly killed, Riley never finding out who it actually was. He returns to Mary Jane, only for her to reveal that the webbing pattern gave away who he really was, and she leaves him, telling him to find his own life. This one exists, I guess? I don't feel that much was accomplished, and the Green Goblin battle feels random and anticlimactic. And even if he wasn't actually Peter, Riley technically is a clone of Peter and has been filling that role for years, so Mary Jane leaving him seems really cold. I guess it's alright, but not as good as most Spider-Man stories we've seen. What If starring Sabretooth? For a while, the series gives up having the title be a theoretical question. Xavier is unable to reform Sabretooth, thus one night he sabotages the mansion and kills Bishop, also knocking out Scott and Emma and later killing Beast. Jubilee resets the system and gets him to follow her into the Danger Room, where she loads multiple holographic programs and turns off the safety protocols, making any danger to them lethal. They go through several simulations, barely surviving each one, until he nearly dies by slicing through the power core. He survives and continues the chase, only for Jubilee to lock him in the Danger Room and chop him up with the laser program. And that's it. This was somewhat thrilling, but why was it a what if? What is this following from? It feels like it could have been placed at any point in the official continuity. Also, barely anything happens. It's just one long chase scene, that's it. I guess it's not awful, but it feels like a big waste of time. What If starring Spider-Man? In a possible future, an adult Peter lives with his son Ben, his offspring with the long-past Gwen Stacy. However, the effects of his spider powers have mutated, turning him into an increasingly ravenous creature who craves raw meat, and occasionally even into an actual Spider-Man hybrid that preys on animals. Ben isn't much better off, bullied at school for being a mutant thanks to the shape of his eyes. His only friend, Sarah Joy, the daughter of Mary Jane. As Peter continues to lose control, he contemplates sending Ben to Xavier's school for mutants, which Xavier also agrees is mandatory. However, Ben, unaware of his and his father's condition, rebels and runs away, going to Sarah's house only for Flash Thompson's son Butch to show up and attempt to kill Ben. Sarah goes to Peter for help, catching him in the middle of another transformation, but when she tells him of Ben's plight, he rushes to find him. Later, Flash finds Butch webbed up and nearly dead, and a manhunt for the Parkers begins, the police finding a mutated Ben in an alleyway, but a mutated Peter jumps in before they can hurt him. Peter's beaten to death by an angry mob, allowing Ben to sneak away and attend Xavier's school. Wow, this was dark. This feels straight out of a horror anthology, right down to the shadowy, amorphous artwork and terrifying visuals, but it's a well-done story with a sense of hope and a different direction for the series. So what happened to Gwen in this reality? What If starring the Fantastic Four? The team are found shortly after crashing back to Earth, with Sue, Ben, and Johnny taken away, while Reed is arrested and put on trial for treason and terrorism, as well as the supposed murders of the other members. 7 years later, he's found guilty and sent to a detention center for further sentencing, but Sue finds him and breaks him out, explaining she escapes from a research facility by refining her powers to turn herself non-corporeal. Unfortunately, the strain causes her to completely lose her form and disintegrate, only for Fury to show up and explain Ben and Johnny are alive and imprisoned by Doom and his scientists. Fury gets Reed to Latveria, where he's immediately captured, and we also see Johnny and Ben being used as power sources for Doom's research. Doom still blames Reed for his accident and tells him that all he's experienced is Doom's revenge, to make sure he suffers as much as possible, and leaves him in his cell to die. Ben is in the cell next to him, and Reed taunts him enough to make him break his chains in the prison wall, the two finally reuniting. They fight their way to Doom, about to open another portal to the Netherworld and free Johnny. Reed offers to help Doom in exchange for his friends, but Johnny, furious after years of torture, goes supernova, killing himself and Doom. Reed is brought back to the United States, where his sentence is heavily commuted, and he and Ben are exiled to the Nevada desert, where he searches for a cure for his and Ben's conditions. Yeah, this was really good, really taking advantage of its alternate timeline setting, though did anyone else expect Ben to squeeze Reed's head like Play-Doh right here? What If starring Cyclops and Havoc? Scott and Alex's parents survived the plane crash that originally killed them, thus the family remains united and their mutant powers dormant. They grow up in a normal environment, but Alex grows jealous and resentful of Scott's talents and popularity. One night, Scott accidentally discovers his powers, convincing himself he's a freak despite his parents' encouragement, and making Alex feel even more left out. Alex finds solace in an abandoned barn, where he meets Dark Beast, who encourages him to find his own talents to develop. But when Scott has to save him during a family outing, Alex feels he'll forever remain in Scott's shadow. So Dark Beast encourages Alex to become Scott's protector against anyone who might want to exploit his abilities. Xavier arrives and invites Scott to join his school, but Scott panics when Xavier reveals he knows of his powers. Alex takes Scott to Dark Beast to hopefully get his help, but Scott sees Dark Beast as a horrifying alien monster, though it's unclear if he is or if it's due to Scott's trauma from the plane crash. Alex steps in and suddenly develops his own powers to push Dark Beast back. Deciding he can't do anything to help Scott, he joins Dark Beast on his mad crusade to eliminate what he considers evil, while Scott blinds himself to ensure his powers and hallucinations never again manifest. Another dark story, but a very human one, touching in how much Alex cares for Scott despite being jealous of him and how the roles end up reversed, though we never do learn what Scott saw after the plane crash. What If starring the Incredible Hulk? Bruce, who's a short-tempered colonel in this world, goes to arrest Rick for trespassing during his experiment, but the explosion kills Rick and irradiates Bruce, who seems to make a full recovery. Bruce marries Betty, but Bruce is revealed to have taken after his father as he neglects and abuses his new wife. One night, a sudden migraine makes him collapse, and as Betty runs to find medicine, an explosion reveals Bruce transformed into an ethereal green being with a more meek and innocent persona. It's attacked and fights back before flying away in horror. Bruce is unaware of his transformation and immediately calls for retaliation against the being. Later, it visits Betty, suggesting its personification of Bruce's childhood trauma before leaving again. Bruce's pursuit of the creature intensifies, as does his abuse of Betty, but one night as he's about to kill her, Bruce turns into the being, revealing to Betty they're the same before flying away again. Bruce finally realizes he's the being and how to call it, thus he repeatedly gathers his forces, transforms, and they tear the area apart, claiming they're fighting off an attack, Bruce receiving accolades in response for saving the day, and Betty powerless to fight back. He soon graduates to killing innocents to create more fear for the being and attention for his team. One night after another transformation, Betty can take no more and asks to be put in protective custody, where she tells her tale to Doc Samson. Unfortunately, Samson doesn't believe her, and at Bruce's behest, she's locked away forever. Wow, this one was hard to get through, and might be the most uncomfortable story of the entire series, but it does treat its subject with respect, so while I don't recommend it, I can't get angry at it. What if starring Cannonball? Joshua feels ignored being the normal brother of two famous mutant heroes and spends as much time as he can alone. One day, he throws his guitar against a strange metal object, which reveals itself to be a damaged sentinel, who can't recall its programming, thus seeks guidance from Joshua. Using his new robot friend, he humiliates the school bully, but everyone notices the robot and not him. Still feeling ignored, he paints the sentinel to resemble the X-Men, then tries to impress a girl he knows, but flees when it destroys a roof. Every time Joshua tries to instruct the sentinel in heroics, something goes horribly wrong, and he resigns himself to mediocrity. Later, at a party for Sam and Paige, the sentinel repairs enough of itself to remember its main directions, literally crashing the party and attacking the heroes. It disables Sam and Paige, but before it can destroy them, Joshua intervenes, its original programming conflicting with the new directives Joshua gave it. Unable to resolve its conflicts, it terminates itself before it can do any more harm. Later, Sam tells Joshua that no action will be taken against him, but if he wants to prove himself a hero, he should clean up everything the robot has destroyed, which Joshua agrees to, finally getting appreciation from his family. We've seen this story in a lot of other media, but it's done well here and is some good lighthearted fun. Welcome break from the edginess of the last few stories. What if starring Wolverine? A feral Logan living deep in the forest hunts a hunter and a bear, only for it all to be a hologram, a mysterious figure announcing they're there to capture Logan. Their first trap fails, and in the confusion they drop a holographic disc, showing images of Scott and Jean that seems to suggest they want him put down, and triggering faint recognition in Logan's primal mind. Logan escapes the hunter again, even jumping off a cliff to get away, and in a brief fit of intelligence prepares a trap for them. He lures the figure into the trap and seemingly impales them in a pit of spikes before going through their bag, finding multiple memoirs of Logan's past. He touches a strange gadget and it wraps around his hand, pinning him, while holographic projections reveal the X-Men actually want him brought back from the woods, where he ran to after having his adamantium ripped from his skeleton and suffering severe mental trauma from the experience, and he's been living away from humanity for over 10 years, and that they hired Cable to bring him back, who did not die in the pit. Whatever's left of his humanity tugs at him to listen, but ultimately the beast side wins out and he escapes by cutting off his own hand. Thus Logan continues to live as king of the forest. This was a very breezy but exciting read, and thankfully another X-Men story not taking place in a dystopian world. Also, I wonder if this Logan's hand could grow back. What if starring the Juggernaut? In a future where the Sentinels have wiped out all life, the immortal Kane is all that's left, destroying all remaining Sentinels, then wandering the world with nothing else to do. Years later, he comes across the Grand Canyon, where he's shocked to find Magneto, who immediately attacks him. Kane doesn't want to fight, but Magneto blames him for the world's destruction. He explains that he was a prisoner on the Stranger's planet, but when he saw the Sentinels destroying the world, he escaped, but arrived too late to stop them. Kane tries to say he had nothing to do with it, but Magneto reveals he did, as Kane killed Xavier and most of the X-Men, thus the remaining heroes weren't powerful enough to stop the Sentinels' rampage, who also poisoned the world with the radiation toxic to all living things. Magneto dies immediately after, and Kane has a freakout, the ground underneath him giving way and revealing a set of doors guarded by Iceman. He smashes through both and discovers Magneto's team and a handful of humans still alive, but not for much longer, as without the doors, the radiation sweeps in and poisons the rest of all life, dooming Juggernaut to an eternity of loneliness. It's another apocalyptic X-Men story, but I appreciate the Last Man on Earth style change-up, and it is one of the better issues of the series. So knowing this universe, Kane would just have to wait until the Skrulls decide to invade again for company. What if starring Ghost Rider? To torture a future Ghost Rider, Mephisto possesses a young Danny's teddy bear, calling himself Mr. M, and serves as his conscience to horribly twist his morality, causing him to burn down his house and kill his parents, and later become a serial killer. His sister Barbara finds that Johnny Blaze is their older brother, who doesn't remember being Ghost Rider but has horrific recurring nightmares about it. She tries to contact him, but he thinks it's a joke and never responds. Later, while they visit their parents' grave, Mephisto convinces Danny to kill Barbara, which he does, but the guilt manages to affect even him and he runs blindly away, only to be led to the talisman, which turns him into Ghost Rider. However, Ghost Rider is horrified at the lack of morality and control of the person it's possessing, and it runs until it can return to the void. Danny continues to murder people, then use the talisman to force Ghost Rider out to take the blame, then later return as Danny with all suspicion cleared. He graduates the police academy and marries Stacy, but Mephisto tells him to go kill Johnny, who's currently being warned by the spirit of Barbara. Danny blows up Johnny's trailer, his family barely escaping in time, then tries to kill them personally, but is forced to escape and turn into Ghost Rider. But Ghost Rider, having enough of his evil, commands Johnny to kill it, which he does, leaving Danny trapped in the void for all eternity. Well, this was depressing, but still engaging, and something I'm surprised main series Mephisto never tried, though I'm not big on the amorphous artwork. What if starring Quicksilver? Eric manages to save save his wife and his daughter Anya, and they remain united. Wanda and Pietro are later born, and Eric keeps his family sheltered from the world. Much later, the three kids are mountain climbing when Pietro announces he's going to see the world. Anya says it's forbidden, but he ignores her and runs off. Eric goes after him, demanding he return, but Pietro, tired of being told what to do, runs away, even throwing off Eric's ability to sense him. Pietro moves to New York, using his talents for petty crime and living rebelliously, and convincing well-off college students to give him food and lodging. One day, he punches out another kid in the lunchroom, and the coach, noticing his physique, signs him to a track team, eventually leading him to big-time athletics and a glorious lifestyle. Anya begs him to come back home, which he does, to find Wanda has disappeared, and when he goes to find her, a freak bike accident paralyzes his legs. Now stuck at his family's mansion, he does what little he can to look for Wanda, one day receiving an anonymous tip, which leads him to finding a large amount of Wanda's hair. Pietro finally confronts the dark dealings of his father, even shooting him thinking he'd deflect the bullets, but he takes it to prevent his family from the evil and more powerful forces he aligned himself with, and it's revealed Anya killed Wanda and caused Pietro's accident, jealous of the attention they were getting while she was the unpowered child who bore Eric's wrath, and now she's the most powerful member of the family. Great story with a great twist, and with so much of the series comprised mostly of extended fight scenes, I'm happy to see these latest issues are very plot-focused. But who are these two people? What If starring Black Knight? 30 years after the fall of Camelot, Arthur's surviving loyalists are guarded by Eric Garrickson and his keep, but the land is unsustainable and they're quickly dying off. One night, a strange craft arrives at their doorstep, bearing Merlin and the unnamed daughter of Morgan Le Fay, who have fled from the Kingdom of Doom, the new ruler of Camelot. They reveal that Doom is about to make a discovery that will let him conquer the world, so they must strike before he can. Despite the warnings of his friend Owen, Eric jumps at the chance and gathers everyone to retake Camelot, taking the title of the deceased Black Knight, with Owen also summoning the winged steed Valinor. After much preparation and travel, the two armies finally battle, everyone slaughtered except Eric, but the battle was just a distraction so Merlin, Le Fay's daughter, and Owen could infiltrate Doom's castle, where they discover a time platform. It's revealed Merlin is actually Nathan Richards, father of Reed, and at some point he and Doom travel back to Camelot and were stuck there, where Doom has spent the last few decades finding and excavating vibranium, which he will use to power the machine and use to travel and conquer all of time. It's also revealed that the girl is also Doom's daughter, and Owen was responsible for the original Black Knight's death, Doom promising his people's life if he betrayed him, but Doom kills Owen to get him out of the way. Doom is stabbed by Eric, and Nathan snatches the vibranium, then uses it to send Eric and Doom's daughter back in time to stop Doom's original attack and preserve the Black Knight bloodline. This was fun, even if I don't know what specific point was altered, if there was one. What If starring Rogue? Mystique first meets Rogue after the Cody incident and adopts her, taking her to the Brotherhood of Mutants mansion. While there, she notices strange sounds and images from the attic, and finally breaks in, discovering Nightcrawler, who was also adopted by Mystique when he was a baby and goes by the name Michael. Mystique allows the two to become friends, but Rogue grows concerned why Mystique keeps him locked in the attic. Rogue finally confronts Mystique and absorbs her mind, learning that she's ashamed for his inhuman appearance and nearly killed him when she was being pursued. A disgusted Rogue runs and frees Michael, and they both try to escape. Mystique tries to stop them, but Rogue knocks her out, knocking herself out in the process. Michael runs out the doors, but the Brotherhood, unaware of his existence, thinks he's one of the X-Men and attacks, severely injuring him. Rogue gets to him before he dies, and he tells her to absorb his teleportation powers, but the trauma sends her abilities into overdrive, and they end up combining into one form, seemingly also destroying the mansion and evil mutants. And years later, they tell Mystique it's all her fault and leave her all alone. This was interesting, and a different way for Rogue's powers to manifest that does make sense, and who would think this would become a thing? What If starring Bishop? This was technically released after issue 98. Fitzroy opens a time portal to nowhere in particular, with Randall, Malcolm, and Bishop following. This time, the portal takes them to years before the X-Men are even formed, and Jean Grey is still a young girl and Xavier's only student. Fitzroy drains the life of a random innocent, then, after finding what year it is, goes to Xavier, warning him that his dream of starting the X-Men will mean a dystopian future and much death, horrifying him. Meanwhile, the team arrive moments after Fitzroy has already left and are blamed for the death, the ensuing police firefight killing Malcolm and Randall and injuring Bishop, who barely manages to get away. As he watches the fight on the news, Xavier sees his name on the Xavier Security Enforcers uniform logo, further convincing him of Fitzroy's story and calling the FBI to track down Bishop, who find him deep in the woods near the mansion. Bishop tries to tell Xavier his side of the story, but only confirms the future will hold war and intolerance, and when he also tries to explain how much hope the X-Men will also bring, Fitzroy appears and Bishop goes after him. After a violent fight, Bishop is captured and imprisoned forever, while Xavier promises he'll never form the X-Men. Short, simple, and depressing, but an interesting what-if story nonetheless. So if there are paper boys, what year is this supposed to be? What If starring Spider-Man? Again, during the time Peter and Felicia are an item, Felicia encourages Peter to give up his secret identity, but he won't do it for the safety of his family and personal life. At wit's end, Felicia breaks into Peter's home and steals his spare web shooters, giving them to Flash and taking him web swinging right in front of the Daily Bugle, where Jonah notices and figures he's seen Spider-Man without his mask. And with Felicia's help, finds the face belongs to Flash, which he immediately reports on, Peter finding out as soon as he sees the paper. He confronts Felicia about breaking his trust and putting Flash in danger, then goes out to find him. Feeling guilty, Felicia also searches, only to find Scorpion kidnapping Flash and driving him to a warehouse, where he sets up an acid trap to slowly finish him off. Felicia tries to save him, but Scorpion knocks her out and sets her in the same trap, then goes to Jameson to demand he pays him the reward he promised when he first became Scorpion. Peter quickly turns into Spider-Man and eventually disables Scorpion, then demands Jonah tell him where Scorpion told him he hid Felicia and Flash, but Jonah demands he unmask himself for the information. Meanwhile, Felicia wakes up and saves herself and Flash, then runs to the Bugle, arriving right at the moment Peter removes his mask. This is fine, but it feels like it would fit in the main series, with Jonah either convinced Peter was playing a joke or he just didn't get a good look. Also, some of the artwork is demented. What If starring Gambit? This milestone issue has two stories. In the first, Gambit works for Mr. Sinister, betraying him being cast out of the X-Men, and Rogue turning down his marriage proposal. He tries to cut ties with Sinister, but Sinister promises if Remy can find one more treasure, he'll cure Rogue's condition. Remy finds and steals the box from the Morlocks, only for Rogue to try to stop him, but he distracts her and runs. He gives Sinister the box and gets the antidote, but Rogue shows up and grabs it, Remy telling her to drink it and they can finally touch. Despite her doubts, Rogue takes it, but when they kiss, Remy drops dead. Rogue immediately goes after Sinister, killing him and disrupting his ceremony, and when she opens the surviving box, she finds Marvel Comics, revealing her entire reality is fictional. Next, during the Fantastic Four's initial spaceflight, Sue hits her head and wakes up in an amalgamation of her universe and the Land of Oz. She finds she's killed Galactus, so Doom shows up to claim his magical sneakers, which Sue seems to be wearing. She's sent to see Namor, encountering warped versions of Reed, Ben, Johnny, and Herbie on the way. Once she gets there, everyone gets their wishes, including Sue, who wakes up and finds herself at the moment her team got their powers. Then we finish with some joke covers. This was weird, with a straightforward alternate story suddenly turning into a dark comedy, followed by a decently funny parody of the Marvel Universe. Overall, good shakeup for the 100th issue. What if the Angel remained a horseman of Apocalypse? Yeah, we're back to theoretical titles. Warren is snapped out of his servitude for Apocalypse and eventually rejoins X-Factor, life seemingly returning to normal. Much later, a mysterious serial killer kills a good number of mutants, thus X-Factor go after the Brotherhood and Hellfire clubs to either find the killer or protect them from whoever it is. Scott is nearly killed by Sebastian, and Warren saves him by seemingly killing Sebastian. Scott chews him out over this, with Warren demanding to know if they ever cared about him, and the team recognizes his trauma and seemingly make amends. Later, the killer strikes at the Marauders, with X-Factor arriving a second later. They try to disable the team, but when a handful of Marauders try to run, they're cornered and killed by the other three of Apocalypse's horsemen. But the biggest shock comes when Warren kills everyone, friend and foe alike, revealing that he's the killer and never shook off Apocalypse's brainwashing. And later, he declares himself the mightiest of all life and the one who will weed out the weak as death itself, suggesting he also kills Apocalypse. This is pretty good, even if I'm unfamiliar with how his arc actually went, though where were the other horsemen all this time? What if Daredevil's dad had thrown the big fight? Jack lets go of his pride and, at the request of the Fixer, throws the championship, earning enough money to send his son Matt to Columbia University. There he meets Foggy and, more importantly, Elektra, who he quickly begins a relationship with, which ends abruptly when her father is killed and she silently blames Matt. Jack's career is reduced to a joke and he's eventually put into a coma. With the hospital bills stacking up, Matt decides to also become a boxer, quickly proving his skills and gaining the attention of Kingpin, who becomes an employer that Matt makes very proud. Like his father, Matt is asked to throw the championship, but Matt refuses, winning the fight in Kingpin's anger, who kills Jack in response. He goes to the Kingpin and tells him to confess to the murder or he'll reveal his criminal activities to the world. Kingpin nearly kills him, but Elektra intervenes and kills Kingpin, with Matt wanting to keep Elektra safe, rubbing his own fingerprints on the swords. Thus, he confesses to the crime and goes down for it. This is fine, but very padded, with any major divergence not occurring until over halfway through. Though it is nice to see Matt's dedication to the law keep him from making his father's mistakes. What if, yeah, that's too many words, Steve stops the assassination of Dr. Erskine, thus he's able to use the super soldier serum to create an army and win the war. Steve goes through his freezing and thawing out by the Avengers routine, who this time are fugitives of the government. They explain that the formula was made public and sold to the rich to make them genetically superior over the common citizen, but it's a severely weakened and addictive version, requiring frequent doses and making the corporations dangerously wealthy. They manage to escape the All-Americans government superforce thanks to an undercover Hank and bring Steve back to base, where Erskine is still alive and able to create an antidote to the serum using Steve's blood. The CEO of Roxxon, the main producer of the new serum, discovers that Steve is alive and invites him to a public appearance. Steve agrees, but decries the state of the nation and takes the antidote, reducing back to his frail self. The Avengers hold off the All-Americans while Hank and Ted load more antidote into fireworks to disperse the solution over the crowd, depowering everyone, and thus does a new American Revolution begin. Yeah, I don't like this one. It's not awful, and it's well drawn, but it's super rushed with a lot of questions unanswered. Just stick with the previous time this question was asked. What if the Impossible Man obtained the Infinity Gauntlet? Silver Surfer grabs the gauntlet from Thanos, but Thanos knocks Silver from his board and he drops it, where it's grabbed by Impossible Man. Thanos tries to retrieve it to no success, forcing the Marvel Cosmic Beings to appear and demand it back, and causing I Am to flee with Silver. I Am argues he's powerful yet harmless enough to wield the gauntlet, but Silver says it's too dangerous for anywhere, as they can easily destroy the universe with a passing thought. But I Am transports him back to his homeworld, locates his love Shala Ball, and even restores him to Norrin Rad, seemingly convincing him to let I Am keep it. Norrin finds his new reality blissful, despite some odd reactions from Shala, but Galactus appears and begs Norrin to help him, transforming him back into Silver. Silver reluctantly arrives, only to find I Am about to kill Galactus for earlier devouring his own planet. Though it's made clear it's because I Am feels guilty he let Galactus do it to release his world of what he considered boredom. Silver tries to stop him, but I Am turns him into popcorn to get him out of the way. Silver realizes that the home planet I Am gave him was actually an illusion, but suggests that if I Am and Galactus combine their powers, they can bring back I Am's actual planet, which they agree to. I Am surrendering the gauntlet in return. Galactus secretly admits the planet is also an illusion, but as long as I Am is happy, everything is good. And he is, though Silver wonders what trouble that might spell for the universe. This was funny and really freaking good, easily one of the best. And it's great to see Impossible Man, who, in my opinion, is a horribly overlooked Marvel character. What if that's too long to read? Peter and Mary Jane's baby is never stolen, thus many years later they watch in amazement as their daughter May jumps higher than a basketball hoop. They realize her powers are manifesting as Peter and May suddenly feel their spider sense tingle, but try to celebrate anyway. May and friends are ambushed by the Green Goblin, despite Peter revealing both Osborns are dead in an event that cost him his leg and superhero career, who tells May to tell Peter to meet him for a final battle. Mary and Peter are horrified that Peter has to face his past again, and it inadvertently reveals to May that that she is indeed the daughter of Spider-Man. Peter tries to recruit the Fantastic Five and the new Avengers, but both are unavailable. Meanwhile, May tests out her new abilities, then confronts Mary about keeping her in the dark, Mary telling her the whole story and showing her the Spider-Man costumes and gear. Peter and Mary show up to the meeting place chosen by Goblin, who's revealed to be Harry Osborn's son Normie. He nearly kills both of them, only for May to show up in a slightly altered Spider-Man costume and fight him. After a long battle, he's defeated and taken away, but Peter and Mary destroy all Spider-Man gear to protect May. However, May salvages the blueprints, showing she has a different future in mind. This is unbelievably good, and yes, was the pilot for the successful Spider-Girl comic series. What if the X-Men condemned Gambit to death? When Remy is revealed to have been a spy for Mr. Sinister and also assembling the Marauders, and is exiled from the team for the many atrocities that led to, Warren and Betsy decide banishment is too good for him and hunt him down. They trash his father's club to learn his location, his father quickly warning Remy, hiding in Paris, about the manhunt. The rest of the X-Men also wonder if they let him off too easy, thus they all decide to find him and pass judgment. Warren and Betsy find Remy first, who stayed in Paris because he agrees he deserves punishment, but won't die until the X-Men pass judgment, which the duo want to skip over. The rest of the team show up just in time, and since everyone has their own opinion of what to do, Logan suggests that, since the Morlocks suffered the worst, they pass judgment the Morlock way with the fight to the death. Warren volunteers, thus Remy and Warren fight, Remy continually telling Warren he won't be able to live with his actions, while Warren counters by telling him he's already traumatized because of him. Warren readies the killing blow, but finds he can't do it. The X-Men deciding to walk away and just forget about Remy entirely, except for Marrow, who finishes Remy off, a dying Remy begging everyone to have this be the end of their hate. This is pretty good, but feels like an alternate ending that could take place in the main series. Still, it's not an X-Men dystopian story, so I'm happy. What if Thor had never gone insane? Nothing gets in the way of Thor ruling Asgard, thus he and Sif rule justly in an era of peace. He notices a substitute Thunderstrike in a deadly fight, but is discouraged from mating him and told that his place is in Asgard now. Meanwhile, Loki and Mephisto hatch a plan to ruin Thor, sending Mangog to fight the Avengers. Thor is tempted to offer his assistance in defeating an Asgardian fiend, but still feels is needed in Asgard, sending Sif and her team to help instead. Loki takes control of the Destroyer and goes after Thor, finally getting his attention as he leaves the throne room to fight them off, but Loki and Destroyer's powers prove a match for Thor's. Thus, Thor calls upon the Odin power and destroys the Destroyer, also using it to banish the Mangog and save the other heroes. Loki escapes back to Mephisto's realm, only to find Odin has banished him to Limbo, doing the same to Loki. With all threats gone, the wedding of Thor and Sif begins, but Thunderstrike and Sif realize they will always have feelings for each other. This was fun! I was going to complain about Thor being OP, but with his new power, it makes sense that his battles should no longer challenge him, though why wasn't getting rid of Loki top of Odin's bucket list? What if the Avengers battled the Carnage Cosmic? During a time when Carnage possessed the Silver Surfer, the Avengers show up to help Peter destroy the symbiote, but despite their best efforts, Carnage manages to counter each attack, even badly injuring Vision, before just knocking them all out and running off. The heroes regroup and rethink their strategy, only to get a message from the government that Carnage is using his new cosmic powers to cause comedic chaos across the world, and the heroes worry they may not be able to stop the entity without killing both of them. When Carnage returns to destroy the Statue of Liberty, Tony tries to disable him using ultrasonic frequencies, but the entity is too powerful for that tactic now and severely damages Tony's armor. A massive battle commences, with Carnage countering each attack and even leveling several city blocks, the heroes proving ineffective to stop him. Thus, with no other choice, Firestar uses her microwaves to severely injure the symbiote, allowing Silver Surfer to regain control long enough to fly into space and vaporize himself, killing them both. This was pretty standard, but had some great arc and fight scenes and a meaningful heroic sacrifice. Also, as with the Impossible Man issue, I love omnipotent villains with cartoon powers. What if the Thing had refused to leave Littleville? When the team are trapped in Doom's Littleville simulation, Ben refuses to leave his new chance at a normal life, arguing there are enough superheroes to replace him. Thus, Reed, Sue, and Johnny all decide to leave without him, also leaving Alicia and her father, the former villain Puppet Master, who are unaware of the illusion, and putting Franklin in their care until they can safely retrieve him. Later, Alicia becomes concerned when the trio seemingly disappear, and Ben feels guilty having to keep the secret. He confides with the town priest, who he doesn't know is a simulation of Doom, who suggests he rectify the situation, which he interprets as deciding to give up the charade and join his friends, using a device Reed left behind to turn back into the Thing and fight through the simulation's defenses. However, he discovers that his teammates were all killed trying to fight their way out without him, thus Ben returns home to also discover his family held hostage by Doom's simulation counterpart, who calls Ben a coward not worthy of his family, to which Ben knocks his head off. Ben sadly explains the situation to Alicia, and they reverse engineer a ring gadget the Doom counterpart wore to transfer back into their real bodies, only for Doom to reveal they have just been transferred into another simulation, one he will ensure they will never escape. This was really good, playing with the concept of living in a dream or reality, and makes me want to read the rest of this art. Though why did Doom design his body with a detachable head? What if Colossus never joined the X-Men? Peter doesn't save his sister in time and blames Xavier for it. Thus, he doesn't join the X-Men and instead becomes a member of the Soviet super soldiers. Later, Jean Grey is possessed by Proteus and the X-Men are powerless to stop them. Thus, the Soviets, realizing the potential danger they pose, send the super soldiers to stop them. Xavier, sensing psychic distress from a team he thought was dead, appears to both teams and freezes the action long enough to try to coordinate their attack. Peter is still hesitant to help, so Xavier psychically tells him that his sister's death was a freak accident and nobody's fault, before telling him his plan. Proteus breaks free of Xavier's freeze, and Xavier offers him his body in place of Jean's, which he accepts. But Xavier's power proves hard for Proteus to control. Since Proteus' weakness is metal, Peter attacks them, but Proteus notices just in time to cut Peter's arm arm off, and Peter, having enough of both of them, uses it to kill them both. Peter later retires and becomes an artist, marrying Lania and having a daughter. This is fine, it just feels incredibly short. It introduces all these heroes, kills a few, and ultimately only Peter and Xavier were important. It's an okay done in one, I just don't feel like I took anything away from it. What if Wolverine had become a Horseman of Apocalypse? The experiment to reattach adamantium to Logan's skeleton is a success, and he's brought on as Apocalypse's Horseman War. However, Logan proves too much to control, killing Apocalypse before going after anyone who has ever committed a crime or gets in his way, including most, if not all, super beings. The world unites to bring him down, and far into the future, the world knows peace and unity, with any threats being tracked down and neutralized by the War Watch. Crawl, one of the recruits, becomes frustrated that the world no longer has much use for the group and thinks his talents could be used elsewhere. He tends to retreat to hopefully regain faith in his career, where he meets brother Xavier, who turned out to be a disguised Logan. Keeping his identity secret from Crawl, he tells him his backstory, revealing that Logan eventually managed to find control and has been meditating at the resort ever since to keep it. Later, when Crawl returns to work, he's ambushed by a gang he helped arrest, who nearly kill him, but he's saved by the sudden appearance of brother Xavier. They disable the gang, but Logan is injured and taken to the hospital, escaping before they get there. Thus, Crawl, putting two and two together, decides to become a monk at the resort, where he and Logan can do their best work. This was really good, easily one of the best X-Men stories we've seen. I like how it's about the world healing in the aftermath of Logan's rampage, not the rampage itself. Though I also wouldn't mind seeing Wolverine kills the Marvel Universe. What if New York remained a savage land forever? Kazar and Shanna are never able to stop Parnival from turning Manhattan into a prehistoric jungle, thus 5 years later, it's either adapt or die in this new environment, including for a handful of heroes who still call themselves Avengers, fighting off a savage T-Rex before a long-lost Kazar suddenly reappears. He explains he tried to find a way off the island, but it seems to keep all inhabitants imprisoned. They go to answer a distress flare, only for Parnival to show up and announce he knows how to turn Manhattan back to normal. He just waited this long because he ran out of supplies. He wants to get revenge on Thanos for tricking him, thus he's rigged the terraformer that created the Savage Lands with explosives. They just have to set them off. They're ambushed by Rhino, but the Avengers hold him off as they retreat to the subway tunnels to avoid more attention, but then they're ambushed by a pack of raptors, Parnival proving he can hold his own as he makes short work of them. They get to the terraformer, but Parnival reveals that keys in two separate stations must be simultaneously turned to instantly detonate it, with certain death for the two activators. Kazar and Parnival volunteer, giving Shanna just enough time to run away before the device explodes. Shanna wakes up in a normal-looking Manhattan, only to discover Thanos has terraformed the entire world and possible universe, and her work isn't done yet. This is great! The kind of post-apocalyptic story I could really go for, even if I barely know anything about Kazar, though I wonder how he and Kamandi would get along. What if Tony Stark became the master of the mystical arts? Tony and Strange meet at a party, and a drunk Tony tries to drive Strange home, causing the car accident and Strange suffering permanent hand damage. A gut-running Tony obsessively tries everything he can to fix Strange, leading to both going to Tibet and the Ancient One. They both train in the mystic arts, with Tony proving the better disciple and eventually becoming Sorcerer Supreme, returning home and combining his knowledge of technology and the supernatural into a mystical Iron Man suit that greatly aids their battles against evil. However, Tony's new duty seems to supersede trying to help Strange, who becomes frustrated and hopeless that Tony will ever find a solution. Later, Tony goes to confront Dormammu, his magic tech suit making quick work of all obstacles and even Dormammu's own power, but suddenly he's imprisoned and his armor is taken away by a hidden enchantment, which is revealed to have been given to Dormammu by Strange, who has his hands fully healed in exchange. As Dormammu prepares to invade Earth, Strange is ambushed by Cleo, who points out that Strange has just doomed all of humanity. They steal back Tony's armor, which Strange uses to free him, Tony also revealing Dormammu's fix was actually draining Strange's life. Tony challenges Dormammu to an astral battle, during which his armor steals Dormammu's physical form and begins hopping through random dimensions, with Dormammu forced to chase after it and no longer a threat. Strange decides to stay in this dimension, finding happiness he couldn't on Earth, while Tony finally focuses on his business. Hot damn, this one was good! And I love the marriage of Tony mastering magic and technology. Get this one its own Disney Plus series. Yeah. What if Secret Wars? Yeah, no question for the final issue. Galactus and the Beyonder destroy each other, stranding everyone brought to Battle World. Thus, 25 years later, the former Cabans have settled into a new life. A new generation of supers are born and spend their lives in this patchwork planet, most of whom get along well, but Doom isolates himself while looking for a way to return to Earth. He warns his son Vincent not to interfere with the peace, but he rebels, killing Doom and gathering some of the less noble super children to his cause. But when he tries to recruit Thor's son Balder, he faces opposition, Balder gathering his own team to stop Vincent. They sneak into Doom's castle and ambush Vincent's team, while Balder and Vincent face off, Vincent revealing that he's also sent his Doombots to attack the adult heroes. The Hulk shows up after a long exile and saves the junior heroes, and Doom reveals he's not dead, teleporting Vincent and himself away and ending the conflict. The junior heroes return to find their parents not happy with them, but discipline has to wait as the Hulk reveals he's found a way home by combining Thor's hammer and Kang's portal generator. However, the adults are scared off when the Watcher shows up and indicates something bad will happen, thus the junior heroes have to try themselves to prove there's no danger, successfully transporting back to Earth, only to find that without the heroes, the Sentinels have conquered Earth. Thus the junior heroes pledge to save the world and find a way to bring their parents home. Despite the rushed climax, this was a fantastic story and a perfect way to wrap up this comic run, though I wish the Watcher winked at the end to send us off.